everybody that we need?
So our tips say, yeah, Commissioner Ward, this is Chris Meyer, and I'm here.
Yes. Okay.
Commissioner Ward, this is Marie Cavesi, and I'm here.
All right. Thank you.
Greg Olson here.
All right.
Steve Jacob, present.
All right. And do we still have Ken?
I'll just put on mute.
Where'd Ken go? Ken Fritz.
Sorry, I unmuted you because of the dogs.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm here.
And Heidi's doing what she wants to do?
Yeah, just put mute.
Yes, I am.
Heidi.
Yep, I'm here.
All right. Okay. In being a little more relaxed meeting format, I did find an American flag. So we will not, you don't necessarily need to stand because that changes all the camera angles. So we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. First item of a business is to approve the county board meeting minutes from March 19th.
I move approval.
Second.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the meeting minutes from March 19th. All those in favor say aye.
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 I didn't hear Marie.
Aye.
Okay,
Hello.
I think everybody said aye. So motion passed. Item 3, acknowledge receipt of approved committee meetings. 3.1 was the Park and Environment Advisory Committee, January 7th. And item 2 is Road and Bridge from December 17th, 2019.
Commissioner Cavesi, I move to acknowledge receipt of 3.1 and 3.2.
Chris Meyer, I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion made and seconded, Commissioner Cavesi and Commissioner Meyer. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Hearing no nays, they're acknowledged receipt. Item 4, consent comments and approval of the agenda. Let's start with Commissioner Cavesi.
I have a question on item 5.1, so I can raise it when we open the consent
Okay.
business.
All right. Any other, Commissioner Cavesi?
No.
Okay. Moving to Commissioner Meyer.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Meyer has 2 board action items that I'd like to discuss, and then also probably just an announcement, which is
Okay.
more like a thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Olson.
Nothing for me.
All right. Commissioner Jacob.
I'd like to pull items 5.11, 5.12, and 5.15.
5.11, 5.12, and 5.15. Okay. So we'll move those to general business, making it 6.06. Oh, no. Yeah. 6.0A, 6.0B, and 6.0C, if that works. All right.
Yeah, and then also, I was wondering, are we receiving a update from Sheila Harms today? It says
It's my understanding. Yeah, it's my understanding. It's just the written update that's in the agenda packet.
okay.
Okay.
All right, so I've gone through that. I didn't know whether 5.1 was a item that she was going to be presenting on, because I might want to hear that before we talk about some of these other issues. But otherwise, I've read through what's in the packet. So
Okay.
Okay. I think everything's been pulled that I had questions about, so I will ask for a motion to approve the amended agenda.
moved.
Chris Meyer will second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the amended agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay.
Madam Chair?
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm suggesting that from here on out, perhaps we should have roll call votes.
We can.
Yeah,
Yes.
the tip sheet suggests that, just for clarity. I think for the things that have gone by so far, since they're unanimous, it's probably fine.
Okay, yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, I would agree. Anything that doesn't cover, thank you for that reminder.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so moving on, Mr. Fritz, would you read the remainder of the consent business?
There was a comment, I believe, on 5.1.
Yeah, 5.1, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just, I've read what's in the packet, but I wasn't sure if we are still on our timeline to meet the deadline for this year's money for an application. I don't know if anybody knows that, or also they may have moved the timeline from the state, and I'm not sure. I would really like to meet that 2020 application deadline.
Sheila is on the call if you want to call on her.
Sheila Harms, please.
She's
I
just
see
on
her
mute.
hands
right now.
raised. How do I get her to come?
She's muted.
She's
for some-
on mute
yeah.
herself.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Sheila, you got to unmute yourself. Sheila?
There she goes.
There.
Can you hear me now?
Mhm.
We can hear you now, Sheila.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Yes, I just put that memo into the board packet just to give you an update of what is progressing. And right now, the deadline for the One Watershed, One Plan application round is due June 12th. I have not heard of any delays in that application process. As far as I understand, Bowser is still moving forward with all the deadlines as set. But right now, the surveys were sent out to the elected officers for each of the county boards, the SWCDs, and the watershed district managers. And so once we get those survey results, they will be aggregated. We won't know who says what, but that'll give us an idea of what is of concern that needs to be addressed in the follow-up meeting. And the follow-up meeting will likely be via webinar format, just like today.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on that item? Okay, Mr. Fritz, continue, please.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
let's
Sheila.
see.
Yep.
Want to make sure I've got my bearings here. Okay. So that was 5.1, receive update of One Watershed, One Plan. Can you hear me? Right.
Yes.
Okay. 5.2, approve resolution to accrue negative sick leave balance. 5.3, approve resolution for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dredged material plan. 5.4, approve renewal of grant agreement with Women's Resource Center. 5.5, approve Minnesota Department of Human Services grant contract for children's mental health respite care services. 5.6, approve monthly resolution. 5.7, approve renewal of purchase of service agreement with Catholic Charities, Diocese of Winona, Rochester for Guardian Conservator Services. 5.8, award bid for aggregate shouldering to Dunn Blacktop Company. 5.9, award bid of bituminous resurfacing of Casas 12, 35, 37 to Dunn Blacktop Company. 5.10, authorize Planning Environmental Services Director to enter into a cost share contracts for fiscal 2019 Southeast Minnesota Well Sealing Program. 5.11 has been pulled. 5.12 has been pulled. 5.13, reappoint county surveyor and approve professional service agreement. 5.14, approve 2020 State of Minnesota Federal Supplemental Boating Safety Grant Agreement. 5.15 has been pulled. confirm payment of disbursements. 5.16, confirm payment of disbursements, and 5.17, confirm payment of disbursements. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Meyer votes, will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to approve the consent items as read into the record. Any discussion? We'll do a voice vote then. Commissioner Kavesi?
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Aye.
And Commissioner Ward, aye. So motion carried. So now we will go back to 5.11, the approved contract for services and joint powers agreement for surface water grant program.
Yeah, so I don't know, do we have Sheila Harms? Is she on with us right now? I think this is
Getting there.
Yes, yes.
okay. So this is this is at my last Whitewater Joint Powers meeting, we had discussed this, and on one hand, I certainly want to support the board's decision, which was to support this. However, I was not one of them that voted for it, so I don't really want to vote for it at this point. It appears to function, in my view, exactly as the new 1-1 proposed one watershed, one plan for Mississippi watershed area. And it includes Houston County, which is outside of anything that the Whitewater Joint Powers Board has done before. So to me, it just feels like until Houston County, which one of the sites is in Houston County, I think all the way up to into Wabasha County, of course, quite a few in sites in Winona County. Until those entities have all met, I'm not going to support it. It feels like we're moving ahead with Mississippi One Watershed One Plan before we've done any approvals of it at this point. It hasn't been adopted. It's in the implementing stage, and once it's implemented and we decide we're going to move forward with it, then I can support it. But right now, it just feels it feels like we're moving forward with something we haven't approved yet. So I'm not going to vote in favor of it.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, okay, so I read through the documents in here. I guess I thought all of the sites, there are 8 sites in streams and then 2 that are Lake Winona. I didn't think there were any sites outside of the county. Can
So if
someone?
you look closely at that map, you'll see a star just outside of the county on both sides. There's a star that looks like it's off the map on the lower right-hand corner.
I don't see that on, oh, down there, okay.
Yeah, that's one of the sites.
Oh, and up there.
And then up there. So those 2 are not in Winona County, and they're not in the Whitewater the Whitewater Joint Powers area of governance.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, there's no cost to taxpayers, is there?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay. And so I guess I had a couple other questions about this when I was looking at it, because it says it's the contract for services and the joint powers agreement. But in fact, and maybe our county attorney can weigh in on this, it looks to me like, in fact, when you look at the joint powers agreement, that doesn't involve us at all. So that's really between the Whitewater Joint Powers Board and the MPCA. So we don't have any authority to approve that, nor do we need to. Is that right?
If can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Commissioner Meyer. If you look at the joint powers agreement on page 5, well, it's actually page 81 of your materials.
Yes.
The joint powers agreement is between the MPCA and the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, which is a separate entity. And so it was the decision of the Whitewater Joint Powers Board to enter into this joint powers agreement. So actually the signature page that's at the end of that document on sorry, I'm rolling down here. Page 91 shouldn't be there. I did not put that in there. So 'cause there is no agreement between Winona County and the Whitewater other than what really has been reviewed and approved as to form, which is the document pages, starting at page, sorry, counting here, page 77. That's the Whitewater Joint Powers Board contract for services with Winona County. And it's Winona County providing services under that contract to Whitewater to do some work and get paid. So that's actually the document that the board should be considering here in terms of whether or not you approve that contract. But the joint powers agreement is relevant to it, but it's not an agreement that the county is a partner to. So.
Okay.
I seem to have forgotten how to raise my hand on this.
At the very bottom on the right-hand side, the right-hand corner. Commissioner Jacob,
I still can't find it.
do you have a white bar on the right side that says participants 31?
He maybe has to open the participant box.
Yeah, I had a problem too.
Yeah.
You have to scoot the screen, swipe the screen up, and then on the bottom of the black, in mine it's black, it has participants 31.
Yeah.
You hit that.
Yep.
Then it opens a tab on the right-hand side that has everybody listening in.
Okay. Yep. Got it.
And I see Sheila has her, but I see Sheila has her hand up. I see, okay, Steve, I see you.
Yeah.
Steve Jacob, I see your hand up.
Yep.
Steve, Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah. So I can't agree with that. This doesn't cost the taxpayer anything because we're all paid and we're sitting here discussing it right now. And it doesn't, anything the government doesn't cost the taxpayer nothing. I guess if you're saying maybe it doesn't come out of Winona County's funding, that's different. But anyhow, I'm just not ready to support it. I've had more discussion on it than the rest of the county board. Whitewater Joint Powers Board did support it. I voted against it then. I'll vote against it now. So.
Sheila
Commissioner
Harms.
Chair, yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, just going back to what Commissioner Jacob was referring to about one watershed, one plan. This particular project is for completing monitoring activities in support of the MPCA's watershed approach. The MPCA happens to use the same major watershed boundaries as what Bowser uses for the one watershed, one plan. So those boundaries are the same, but MPCA's watershed approach is completely separate from one watershed, one plan. MPCA has been doing this since 2008, going through and each of the major watersheds in the state, completing 2 years of intensive monitoring, followed by an assessment of that monitoring data and determining what streams and lakes are meeting water quality standards and which ones are not, and then identifying what are the causes of possible impairments, and then moving forward to what are the strategies that we can do to protect those that are in good condition and to restore those that need correction or need improvements. So that watershed boundary is the same as what Bowser is using for one watershed, one plan. However, the watershed approach is not connected to one watershed, one plan, except they happen to have the same boundary. Does that clarify it, or are there any follow-up questions?
Commissioner Jacob, I see you still have your hand up.
Uh, yeah, so my concern with it is the borders that it's extending and how Whitewater Joint Powers is the one that's either what you want to call the pass-through agency or the one managing it. Whitewater Joint Powers has not had a relationship with Houston County in the past, and here we are managing this, which goes outside of any boundaries that we've managed previously. These are new boundaries. The Mississippi, as Sheila stated, we're using the new boundaries of the one watershed, one plan as proposed. And I haven't talked with any Houston County commissioners, but here we are saying we're going to approve and implement and have Whitewater Joint Powers be the pass-through agency or the managing agency, however you want to look at that. So I just feel like we're moving forward with one watershed, one plan implementation before we've discussed it with all the involved parties. So that's why I didn't get an explanation from Sheila that I felt addressed any of that.
Yeah, except Commissioner Jacob, it is not one watershed, one plan. And this sub-agreement that's on the agenda today for Winona County, the agreement between the Whitewater Joint Powers Board and Winona County to complete some of these monitoring activities, that same contract for services was approved by Root River SWCD, which represents Houston County. They approved that sub-agreement at their April 9th board meeting. Wabasha SWCD approved their sub-agreement on March 26th. So those entities are willing to be participants in completing these monitoring activities in support of MPCA's intensive monitoring for these next 2 years. So in that capacity, they have weighed in and are willing partners in this grant.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thanks so much, Madam Chair. I know that Commissioner Jacob has concerns, and it's sort of a longstanding concern of his that has to do with multiple regulatory bodies. However, I think that in his statement, he sort of talked about this as management, and that isn't what I'm hearing, and I don't think that's what the contract says. This is water quality monitoring, which is not management. And so I don't really see a concern with going ahead. I can see that the recommendation as it's written asks for approval of the services, approval of the JPA, and then pending MCIT review, which I'd be fine. I don't really think that any of that is necessary, but if that didn't hurt anything, I would actually really then support going ahead with the stream monitoring, since it doesn't really cost the Winona County taxpayers anything. There's no match that needs to come from us. And I don't think that it's unheard of for us to do joint actions with other bodies like the soil waters districts from other counties. So I don't really see that there's any kind of growing outreach, although it sounds like that, and I respect the fact that Commissioner Jacob maybe has that concern.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I do feel like this is the management of this monitoring is being passed through the Whitewater Joint Powers entity. And I can appreciate that at the Fillmore, Houston County, Root River SWCD has had a chance to weigh in on it, but we still haven't had any collective meetings, no elected officials between Houston County and Winona County or Wabasha or Olmsted have discussed and met or agreed. This is, to me, this is staff moving forward faster than what the elected process is moving forward. We are being asked to manage the monitoring through Whitewater Joint Powers. So, or at least that's my understanding. And I can appreciate if everyone else wants to vote for it. I don't have an issue with that. I'm not there yet, and I feel like we're acting as though we've already approved this one watershed, one plan. We've just said we're using those boundaries, and we haven't got that far. Counties haven't discussed with each other or talked to each other at this point from elected official standpoints.
Sheila Harms.
Yes, thank you. Well, the monitoring is in support, as I said, of the MPCA's watershed approach. And, you know, and this is what the MPCA prefers to do is to work with local entities to help local entities be involved with some of the things that they are doing. And they will be doing the biological monitoring, and this is what is called the chemical monitoring sites, the 8 stream sites and the 2 lake sites. And just to try and get local entities involved and engaged with what is going on in their watersheds. If by chance a local entity chooses not to be involved, that they don't have the time or the resources, you know, MPCA will step in and do the monitoring. So one way or the other, the monitoring is going to get done because this is the schedule. These next 2 years, monitoring will be done in the Mississippi River Winona watershed and the Mississippi River La Crescent watersheds. And so it'll move forward. And Commissioner Jacob is correct. Yes, it is taxpayer money that is paying for this monitoring effort. It is the taxpayers of the entire state of Minnesota that pay for the monitoring effort, but what's coming locally is, you know, it's being paid for by the state, so there is no local match required to complete these activities. Our mileage is being paid for. The cost of the lab fees to analyze the samples is being paid for, and the staff time is being paid for. So it's an opportunity for us to be involved and to be part of the process of the monitoring for these watersheds. So that's just laying that out there. And what I'm looking for today is to approve the contract for services between the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, which has the executed grant to complete these activities, and Winona County.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It does seem that this contract deals with the monitoring, and that's one of the first steps in the process. And we have been asking for data. This is for 8 of our streams and 2 of our lakes. So I feel that since the individual counties and agencies, the SWCD and the Root River, have already weighed in on it, that a group meeting of all of us is not necessary at this time. So I would be in favor of approval for this recommendation.
Commissioner Olson, you did have your hand up.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion based on the discussion to approve this item.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Olson.
Commissioner Meyer will second that motion.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Meyer. Okay. Discussion. Sheila.
Yeah?
Sheila, you had your hand up?
Yes, can you? Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta lower it.
Okay. Attorney Sonneman.
Sorry. I just wanted to clarify again, the joint powers agreement is not, I mean, the recommendation includes approving that, but that is not an agreement that has anything to do legally with the county and Whitewater or the state. So it's really what is being asked here is to approve the contract for services between Whitewater and Winona County. So that,
But with that, Karen, with that point made, I'm on like page 66 as chair, I'm being asked to sign that. So that does link us together. Does that extend our liability?
Sorry, let me look at 66.
Yeah, I saw page 66. It does look for my signature.
Page 66?
Oh wait, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Right.
Maybe that's
Yeah,
the
wrong one.
Okay. I don't have to sign anything?
That signature page got on, I think,
In air?
in error. Yes, that the only signature page that should be there is for the contract which is on page
80.
80, yes.
Yeah.
80. So really the signature page on
91.
91, thanks Sheila.
Yeah,
Should
so
be-
I am asked to sign something.
That's
So
good.
what am I being asked to sign?
You're being asked to sign if the board approves the contract between the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, which is proposing to contract with Winona County. If you look on page 77 there at the top, to do that monitoring, the water monitoring.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing that's being
It's
asked.
somewhat muddy water
Yeah.
then.
Madam Chair-
It
Madam
is,
Chair?
I mean, there's the confusion with the other thing that, you know, had been discussed, like at Root River about the Mississippi one watershed, one plan. So, I mean, but this is separate, so.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
Madam Chair, would you be more comfortable if we amended the motion to remove that signatory page?
Yes.
Okay, so can I do that? Am I allowed to make
A
that?
friendly amendment?
Yeah. And so I would guess that I would change this to say that we are approving the contract for services, and I would drop the and joint powers agreement. I don't care if MCIT goes ahead with their review. I understood that it looks like it's pending, so maybe that's already been started. I don't know.
Okay, so Commissioner, let's see, Commissioner Meyer, you seconded it. Commissioner Olson, are you
I
accepting
will
a
accept that amendment.
friendly amendment? Okay, all right. We need to vote on the amendment then. All those in favor of deleting the signature page 80, say aye.
No, it's
Um,
deleting the signature page on
91.
approving 80.
It's the signature page on 91.
91, yeah.
91,
91?
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Let me go up to 91.
And maybe you'd like to take a roll call vote.
Okay, there, 91. Yes, Commissioner Kavesi. We're voting on the amendment to remove the signature page.
And the joint powers agreement section statement.
Right, and the wording for the joint powers agreement
Yeah,
in
Right,
the
that's
right.
recommendation. Okay, I approve. Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer,
aye.
Commissioner Olson,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob.
I'm not sure I fully understand exactly what we're doing. I can support changing it, but I'm still going to vote against the motion. So
Okay, all right, so a no vote. And I will vote aye to remove those items. Just a part of my research, I did touch base with a county commissioner in Houston County, Commissioner Eric Johnson, and he was not aware of any of this. So, you know, I really do, I understand Commissioner Jacobs' concern that we're going into Houston County. I said, now don't shoot us if we're trespassing. Of course, I know it's all volunteer and everything, and it's right on the border. But it does seem a little disingenuous that the Whitewater Joint Powers Board would approve this, but they haven't had any dialogue, I guess, maybe through the Root River Water, Soil and Conservation. But then the Root River Soil and Conservation is not the Houston County Board. So I think some of the process is flawed. And he was a little concerned of where this is going. And one of the items, some of these agreements were signed back in 2015, he is finding, because he's a newly elected. So they were signed back in 2015 by different boards, different people, and a lot has changed since 2015. So how long some of these agreements were held to is unclear. Should there be an ending date to some of these, agreements, and should they be reviewed and the new people in charge take actions to support or non-support? I guess that's a question for legal. And then one of the questions being that it says that Winona County is going to get like $11,000 for staff and mileage and everything. So does that reduce? So is that Sheila's salary? Are we changing around? And then if you look at the contract, there's a lot of verbiage in there for workman's comp, liability, professional resources and things like that. So how does that is this new money that we pay Sheila with that takes out of some other pot? And maybe Sheila, you can answer that.
Okay. That, first of all, you're talking about resolutions that Houston County Commissioners weren't aware of being signed. I think you're referring to the One Watershed, One Plan resolutions. Is that correct?
I'm not 100% sure. No, this was
Okay.
it was a brief conversation, so we didn't dig
Okay.
into the exactness. No.
Okay.
I
All
don't.
right. And but this particular contract for services related to the surface water assessment grant went to the Root River SWCD, which is the SWCD representing Houston County. And they, when we initially were working on this, they helped develop the work plan for this and chimed in on that, and they voted and approved their contract for services. So the SWCD for that county has been involved and has approved it. And yes, you are correct. It did not go to Houston County Commissioners for approval, but their SWCD is separate from them. And I forget what your other question was.
How well the dollars then? Does this? I know you're personally paid by a number of different resources. So how does this affect?
Yes.
Does it save Winona County $11,000? Winona County
Yes, up to
dollars.
yes, and that in part is to have a couple members of the Planning and Zoning Department assist me with the monitoring efforts, so that this grant is not just my time. My time is separate with Winona, with the Whitewater Joint Powers Board. So this was the part that was able to come to Winona County to assist with that monitoring effort. And your reference to the language on workman's comp and things of that nature, that relate back to the agreement that Whitewater has with the MPCA. And the MPCA grant agreement, that's boilerplate language that's all in all of their related grants.
Okay. Sheila, you probably know, who is legal counsel for the Whitewater Watershed Group?
I refer and have all my documentation referred to, Karen reviews them or her staff.
So, Karen, are you there?
Yes, and
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Karen, are you legal representation for the Whitewater Joint Powers Board?
They have asked me to review things because they don't have a legal counsel. So as an elected, I feel that, in terms of assisting them on that, and because Winona County is part of the Whitewater, so I have reviewed, just like I am counsel for soil and water.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this project and moving forward, my gut tells me that the Whitewater Joint Powers Board is somewhat aggressive in taking over some of these grants and everything, but I question the structure and the working framework that they have the capability of going forward in a very large scale. I sat on that committee for a number of years. It seemed that back then it has been a number of years ago, it was a rather loosely run organization, which is fine. But it just seems like they're stepping into much more technical things and assuming, and maybe it's the assumption, maybe I'm assuming, the assumption that they're in control over a very large geographic area. And we need to watch that, I think, is what we need to watch that.
Can I go back? Oh, sorry, Marcia.
Yes.
Excuse me, Commissioner Ward. You had asked about the, could board members or boards review these contracts if they've been in place for many years, and it's kind of, people just look at them and say, oh, that's, we had that last year and the year before and the year before. But at any time, a board, can review contracts if you're not satisfied with the arrangements, or if you feel that you know, that they've been in place for so long and nobody's really taken a look at them. We do look at these very carefully in my office. And I do, yes, do the review of the ones from Whitewater when Ms. Harms asked me to do that, as well as through our Environmental Services and Planning Department. And when you asked about, you know, all this indemnification language and workers' comp, that's all very important components of any contract, particularly between entities, so that there's a separation, and making sure that nobody, I know Commissioner Ward, you've raised those issues like at Root River about, you know, we don't want to create new employees. And so a lot of this language there keeps things very separate, you know, that each one is responsible for their own actions. Nobody's an employee of the other. So that's why there's a lot of that language in both the Joint Powers Agreement between the MPCA and the Whitewater, as well as this contract for services, so that essentially the Winona County does not become, or employees of Winona County do not become employees of the Joint Powers entity. But then, yes, Ms. Harm's position is one of those that is a mixture of many different pools of funding. So anyways.
So you brought up a valid point, though. I understood this group was going to be looking for volunteers. How do we cover the volunteers? Do they become if we recruit them and sign up as volunteers to go out and do stream monitoring, are we responsible for those volunteers?
Yes, and we have to be careful with that. So just like we have interns, and that would be something that Ms. Holte, I know has, I don't know, is Maureen participating in this? So, but in terms of personnel issues and the same thing happened with the soil and water and the aquatic invasive species with, you know, some of the volunteers. We made it very certain in terms of those agreements that liability issues were covered. So, but yes, it's the responsibility of the entity.
Okay.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, is it Sheila?
Yes, Commissioner Ward, I can relate to, I know there is some language in there about recruiting volunteers to assist with some monitoring. Now, the monitoring that's within this grant agreement or the sub-agreement is for local staff to conduct the monitoring. But there is also a component that's available through the MPCA. It's called the Citizen Stream Monitoring Program. And that is an ongoing initiative by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to get people involved with monitoring the stream that goes through their backyard. I volunteer myself. I've been doing this for about 8 years now at Pleasant Valley Creek. And so it's a long ongoing program through the MPCA. There's also a lake monitoring program that's been going on even longer. But basically, this was an opportunity, as long as we had this grant, to provide some press releases. And I had hoped to have an Earth Day event to try and get people interested in how do you monitor your stream. You know, it's easy. It takes 15 minutes. And so this is a program through the MPCA. So any of the volunteers that would be enlisted, they can actually sign up themselves online, watch the webinars on how to monitor a stream, how to submit the data. And like I said, so that, you know, it's just making people aware of this program, that they can be involved as citizens and monitor the stream that they happen to live nearby and be a part of this monitoring effort. And the data that's collected by the Citizen Stream Monitoring volunteers is put into a database by the MPCA, and they actually do look at that. So it's being used by them to help assess ongoing what is the quality of our streams. So that's what that language was in there for the volunteer effort.
Okay, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes, I appreciate some of this discussion and clarification, but I find it very similar to discussion we had at a previous meeting. I'm also a little confused. We passed the amendment. Are we discussing the original motion now, or passing the resolution, or
Yeah,
not sure where we are in the agenda?
Yeah, yes, we amended the, we had a friendly amendment to remove the signature page and the joint powers. So we still have the full motion. One last question, if I could, from Sheila. Are these all new sites? I mean, we've been collecting data and monitoring streams for a long time. Are these all new sites, or do we have a
No,
database already?
Okay, Commissioner Ward, no, they are not new sites. These are all stream and lake monitoring sites that have been established by the MPCA. And the reason is the MPCA decided not to go with new sites for this next round of monitoring is for that reason, because we have data already at these particular sites. So now we're having newly collected data at the same sites so that we can better assess what the trends are. Because if we had a brand new site, then we wouldn't know what the trends were, if they were going up or if they were going down.
Okay, so in that database, do you have also the information of land application practices, best management practices that have been taken place in the immediate area to know if anything's working?
I know that when MPCA evaluates the data, in some of their reports, they do, for example, nitrates in streams. One of the things that they did do is looking at the subwatersheds that drain to that particular stream site that had high nitrates. What was the percentage of row crops in that subwatershed versus other activities? And so one of the things that the MPCA did come up with is if it's more than 60% row crops, then that does bump up the nitrate level in that stream at that location. So that's one of the correlations that they're finding. They also did find that there were also correlations to waste treatment plant locations. They also consider that, where those are located and if that is compromising stream quality. Initially when they look at the data, it's just the data, but then in assessing that data and trying to identify what are the potential pollutant sources, they do look at the watershed and identify, well, what is in this watershed that could be contributing to X, Y, or Z. So yes, they do look at that in their evaluation.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
Thank you. So yeah, this is a huge expansion of the Whitewater Joint Powers territory. You said that Whitewater Joint Powers covers a large territory. So this is an expansion. Whitewater Joint, part of my contentions are that Whitewater Joint Powers has not operated within Houston County previously. I'm very certain the Houston County Commissioners are not aware of what's going on here. At some point in time, I will be crossing paths with Houston County Commissioners, and if they have questions, how did Winona County and Olmsted County and Wabasha County assume some type of jurisdiction to operate within Houston County? Also have concerns about, suppose there's something going on with monitoring, someone falls in the creek, hits their head on a bridge, gets killed. Why are Winona County citizens being paid or being responsible to pay the liability insurance for something that could happen outside of our county that has not been approved by Houston County Commissioners? These are all concerns that I had, and we'll get into this further with the next couple of issues about really expansion of government and blurring of government boundaries. This whole Whitewater, or the whole One Watershed, One Plan, it gets more and more muddy. It muddies the water, literally, and figuratively, I guess I should say. So there's a lot of concerns with all that, and I would like to hear an answer of why are Winona County citizens being asked to be liable for activities going on outside of our county? I guess that'd be a question for Karen.
Can I answer that?
Go ahead, Sheila.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, as far as the question about Houston County and liabilities to Houston County, first of all, the agreement is between the Whitewater and MPCA. Root River SWCD is participating in this because they are picking up that monitoring site that is in Houston County. So they are the ones that are doing that particular site. Winona County staff or Whitewater, myself, are not going down to Houston County to monitor. So that's being done by Root River SWCD. And that's all I have to say.
But still, we're coming to the Winona County Board to authorize this, but we're not going to the Houston County Board. That's, to me, that just doesn't, it's a blurring of the governmental lines and the elected processes. People in Houston County are going to have a hard time understanding who they elected to govern what and why someone else from a different county is coming in and operating within their county. And it's because this is an expansion beyond what Whitewater Joint Powers has ever done before that it feels like we're operating as a 1-1, Mississippi 1-1 before we've approved it. We're certainly using those boundaries.
Let's see, Attorney Sonneman.
Commissioner Jacob had said something toward the end of your remarks that you wanted me to address something. I don't know if Sheila addressed that for you. It's, you know, it's not really a legal issue as far as what you're concerned about. It's a policy issue. All I can say at this point is the contract that is being proposed here is only between Whitewater Joint Powers Board and Winona County, and the Joint Powers Agreement was between MPCA and the Whitewater. So you're not being asked to approve the Joint Powers Agreement. That's already been approved by Whitewater and the MPCA. So the issue really, yes, goes back to, you know, in terms of a policy argument about what's the extent, or what should be the extent of, and how should water and environmental management really take place. So
yeah, my specific question, Karen, that I think you were trying to answer, was, suppose someone's monitoring in Houston County. Winona County commissioners are the ones who are approving this at this point. Like I said, they have an accident, fall in the water, hit their head on a bridge. Who's liable, and why are we liable? Why are Winona County citizens liable for something going on in Houston County?
Well, you make a good point in terms of the indemnification part here. You know, it depends on who is actually going to be in the Houston County part. I think, you know, both you and Commissioner Ward talk about muddying the waters here. The problem is that you know, streams don't respect jurisdictional boundaries. So the whole point of Root River, or the one watershed, one plan, is to do things by watershed. But bottom line, yeah, I mean, if there is a Winona County employee who is working or has been subcontracted by Winona County, and I don't see that part here, but and they are monitoring a stream in Houston County, then according to the contract, each party is responsible for the claims losses, you know, caused by the wrongful or negligent act. Of course, that gets into a lot of issues of, you know, proof and damages. So, but yeah, I think that there needs to be more clarity. I don't think this is the point to do it, but it's more of making sure that when Whitewater did this joint powers agreement with MPCA, yeah, did they talk to everybody in Houston County? there was a discussion and approval apparently, and I think Sheila talked about this, through the one watershed, one plan Root River, and the elected representatives there from Houston County, which were both the commissioner and a soil and water supervisor. So, but yeah, Houston County board needs to be aware of these kind of things as well.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the Soil Water Board is made up of elected officials. So I think that elected officials were made aware of this.
And that's what I meant when I said that, Commissioner Meyer. That
exactly.
they are.
Not every level of decision is approved by county commissioners, only some. So I understand and I respect the fact that you have concerns. I honestly think that they're way overblown for a thing that is not really so extreme. And so I would really appreciate if we could move on and take our vote.
Okay, Karen, did you have something more? Your hand's still up. No? Okay. All right. Sheila, your hand came up.
Oh,
Did you
I
have
lowered
something?
it, but
Okay.
no, I was just going to say too that it was the Root River SWCD, which is, it's kind of confusing because they call themselves the Root River SWCD, but they are actually the SWCD for Houston County, and they are not, you know, they are part of the Route One Watershed One plan, but they are their own countywide SWCD, just like Winona County SWCD is. And they are the entity that made the motion to approve their subcontract for services as a part of the surface water grant. And they will be doing the monitoring for their site in Houston County. I just wanted to clarify that, and that's all I have to say. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, well, let's proceed to vote
Okay.
of the original approval of the contract for services.
I still have discussion.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, so to me, I understand that this seems like that we would be overblowing this, but we're setting precedents into the future. And for me to not say what my position is now comes back on me later as having said, well, you didn't say anything at that point, so it's fine to go ahead in this manner. And really, it's government moving faster than the electeds at this point. So I see governments here interacting with each other, approving things, county commissioners not going on. So I need to justify and be able to look my constituency in the face later and say, yeah, I didn't support that then, I don't support it now, or, you know, these issues need to be straightened out. So I just feel like we're putting the cart before the horse before everyone's on the same page, and we've approved a Mississippi One Watershed One plan. So.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sheila, you have your hand up?
No, I did not. I lowered it.
Okay, all right. Okay, proceed to vote then. Commissioner Kavesi?
I vote in favor of the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer?
Aye, in favor of the motion.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Nay, opposed.
Okay, and I will vote no because I agree with much of what Commissioner Jacob has said. I think before we keep going down this path, and we need to say it now, is that we need an agreement if this is going to be a new watershed district. And I feel strongly that the Houston County board is unaware of this. The Soil and Water did, but there again, why am I being asked to vote on it? Did the Houston County Board, Wabasha, Olmsted, did all the other boards vote on it? So I'm going to vote no at this time. So the motion passes 3-2. Moving on. Sheila, you have your hand up?
No, I didn't. It's lowered.
Oh, okay.
I actually see that it's up too, Sheila.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
wait a minute.
Okay, there it goes. It was a little slow. Okay.
Okay.
Hit it
All right.
again.
So the
There
next
you go.
item is the original 5.12. Approve River One Watershed Plan, Sub-Agreement Exhibit A, Amendment A with Soil and Water Conservation District. Started on page 99. Commissioner Jacob, you asked to pull this one.
Yeah. So as I look at page, it'd be 100, 101. And I just need to point out, so yeah, this 851,000 seems like, gosh, that's great to see that money coming to our collective area. But when you look at the breakdown on it, what I'm seeing there is 70,000 for grant administration, 58,400 for project development, 342,527 for technical assistance, a total of 470,927 of the 851 that goes for things that are not best management practices or practices on the ground. So to me, it looks like this is supposed to be, this one watershed, one plan was supposed to be, we're going to get so many more services on the ground, but we're just spending way more than ever on administration. We're spending like 60 some percent, maybe more than 380,337 is the amount that's spent on projects on the ground, and 470,927 goes to SWCDs and grant administration, project development, things other than practices on the ground. So I'm not seeing the efficiencies coming forward. I mean, because we're using this as a model to see what we're going to do with Mississippi, and I feel like we need to somehow push for more actual practices on the ground over administration, development, and technical.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for clarification purpose, this agreement already exists, and we're just asking to make a little amendment to move some of the funds around from one project to the next. Is that correct? I think I'm asking Sheila, I think.
Well, and so if I could, Commissioner Meyer, the one plan had issues several months ago that staff had been moving funds around prior to the elections approving that. Mm-hmm. So I see it as this is what we directed, the one plan directed staff when they're going to move money around, is that they have to get the electeds appropriate approval to do that. And
Thank you for that clarification. And I guess I want to acknowledge Commissioner Jacobs' thoughts, and I think they're, it's an excellent point of view. I am thinking back, I try to attend, if not the whole meeting, and not all of them, I try to attend as many of the Soil Water Board discussions for Winona County as I can. And I recall a meeting that started with the chair of that board, Leo Speltz, reading an article from the newspaper, and he was talking about the exorbitant price for manure management plans. And then the other Soil Water Board members around that table began to tell him of the importance of all of the testing of the loads of manure, the testing of the sites where the manure is going to be spread, because of the importance of making sure that the right amount of nutrients went to the right spot. And by the time, I learned a lot in that conversation. And what I learned about was that many times this technical assistance or the need to actually do planning makes a very big difference in terms of the outcome, and that there's a lot of evidence to support that, and it not just the scientific evidence, but also kind of anecdotal stories on the part of the farmers involved. So I take his point. I totally take his point, but I also see that you cannot manage a thing that you cannot measure, and that outcomes are important to me, and documented outcomes are really important. So while I understand his frustration with planning, I also understand the importance of that. So I would support the approval of this agenda item.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, so I understand what Commissioner Meyer is saying, but I believe that leads into even a bigger frustration for the Winona County taxpayer, because we've got a feedlot officer that we're paying fully to be on staff full time, and the feedlot officer is really the one who determines what these nutrient management programs are going to be, how they're enforced, and how they're implemented. And none of this money is coming to Winona County feedlot officer. This is going to technical assistance that's redundant over and not the one that has the authority. The authority is the enforcing officer, which is the feedlot officer, and this isn't going for that. This is just more money being spent and being justified for other reasons. So with Commissioner Meyer's discussion, it frustrates me even more.
All right. Any more discussion on this item? Sheila.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say that with the discussion about money being used in the One Watershed, One Plan for program management and preliminary things and not actual practices on the ground, I know this was a discussion you might recall with the River Policy Committee meetings in the past. That very same question was brought up, but one of the things that was brought forward is that, yes, we have this big chunk of Route One Watershed, One Plan funding, and why isn't more of it going on the ground? Well, there is a good portion of that that's being used to support EQIP funding, which is kind of the providing technical assistance for those types of initiatives. So there's a lot more than just the money that we're seeing on this amendment. And this amendment is just moving the funds around to get this particular One Watershed, One Plan grant funds spent down as we get another one coming down the pike for practices. And I know, I believe Daryl is in on the meeting. He probably is muted, but he could probably discuss more of the specifics with the particular funding pots. And his number is 523-2171. If Heidi could unmute him, I think he would be able to speak to more to that. Or maybe he's not here.
I do not pull him up on my list.
Okay, you don't see his number?
No, I don't.
I see his number 523-2171, and he is muted.
The phone number is there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here now.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Where is he?
What were you asking?
Okay, I acknowledge you. Daryl Bott.
Okay, yeah, basically this amendment is just to move some of the dollars around. For the most part, the Rush Pine Creek Farmer-Led Council doesn't exist anymore. So some of the money that was spent to work with them doesn't need to be spent anymore. Plus, all the cost share dollars were going to Winona SWCD landowners. So the money that was going to go to Fillmore SWCD isn't needed anymore. So we're shifting those funds to other projects. And then we're also adding some technical assistance dollars that we had left over that we didn't know who was doing the construction, so we didn't know who should get that technical assistance money. Okay. This was all approved by the policy committee back in February or March.
Any more questions for Daryl? Mr. Jacob.
No, I just the next to just put my hand up to speak.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry. I lost that screen. Why did I lose that screen, people? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Jacob. I'll see if I can.
I will support the motion, but I just wanted to point out that we had a page full of numbers here, and to look at how they actually are playing out. It's in our packet. was the appropriate time to have that discussion to show some of my concerns. So, but I support what the movement of the funds. So.
Okay, I apologize. I lost all of you people that were participating. I don't know who.
In fact, I'll make a motion to approve it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a, hold on. Now I can't see anybody. We'll just do audio here then. We have a motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the Root River One Watershed Plan sub-agreement. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye, or roll call, I'm sorry. Commissioner Kavesi?
I vote in favor. I vote aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Commissioner Olson votes aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
I approve.
And Commissioner Ward votes aye. All right, moving on to, let's see, 5.15, approve Port Authority of Winona tax forfeited property rehabilitation program property application. Commissioner Jacob, you pulled that item.
Yeah, so this all looks like issues that are very easy to support with Habitat for Humanity and Port Authority and the work they want to do here. My concern with the issue is that we're being fair with the public as a whole. Could there be anyone else who wants to buy the property for $1 and do the work and put it back on the tax roll? How are we making the decision to single out these two entities and give them the property for $1 to move forward? So everything they want to do is worthy, and I agree with it all. And it's a good program. I'm just concerned: are we being fair to the community as a whole? I don't know who could answer that.
I think Sandra is on the line, and she would be the one that would be appropriate to answer that, or Steve possibly.
I'm on the line.
Steve's on too.
Okay.
The situation out there was the Baker property. The city has been all over us about the condition of that property. They want it tore down. Frankly, the cost of tear down on that property exceeds what the lot is worth. So Amanda and Nick and Sandra and I have been working for a significant amount of time trying to come up with an arrangement. And what will happen on this is that the Habitat folks are taking the liability for tearing down that property at this point.
Yeah, I understand all that. I saw all that in there.
And it's a terrible property. So
yeah. I understand that the liability exceeds, they'll have more liability. I understand that, but my specific question is, how does the government choose the two entities over having it open to anyone in the public before we award it to these two entities for $1?
Because the whole thing came from Olmsted County. They had done this on a number of properties that they didn't feel would be saleable. And, it's all part of the thing with, trying to provide moderate priced housing and everything else. It's a joint effort with us, the city, and the and Habitat on this.
Yeah, I agree with everything in the packet. I don't see any downside to it. I just feel like maybe there's a step missing on, just like when Winona County is trying to obtain the property for the jail, we're going to try to do it for $1, or, who's in line, who has the authority? Is government being fair with everyone, or are we just picking winners and losers?
I don't know, if somebody else would like to pop in, that'd be cool. Nick, are you on? I saw your name on here.
I'm here also. This is Amanda.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, Administrator Fritz.
Yeah, the way I understood it was the group got together and based on the appraisal and the fact that Habitat is putting basically time and money into it that a private developer couldn't without losing money, that they estimated that it wouldn't be worth the process of going through an auction. So they basically, if someone wanted to buy it for $1 and demolish the property and then try to build something and sell it, that equation doesn't really work unless you have something like Habitat or the port involved where they're willing to put in money that they're not going to get back.
And I see the end result is positive for the Winona County taxpayer in that
Right.
Ultimately we end up with a property that has value and pays property taxes, correct, over versus something that is a liability and we're not making any property tax. It all makes sense. I just want to make sure we're being fair.
Sandra, I see Sandra Sukla's hand up. Sandra, do you have something to add to this? Sandra, are you there? Nope, her hand's up. Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds to me like the folks that we have in our assessor and maybe some of the real estate folks, especially Nick, who does community development for the city, that those experts are really telling us that these are not viable, that it would be a waste of effort to try and sell them because it simply wouldn't pencil out for a private developer. And so I think maybe given that information, it feels a little to me like Commissioner Jacobs' question then becomes more of a philosophical one. And I see how this does increase the tax rolls, how it provides affordable housing. And as a person who's done some volunteer work for Habitat, they're a fabulous organization. They have a really great track record. And so I feel like there's really not any risk associated with us putting the properties in their hands. So sounds like a good idea to me.
Nick Larson.
Nick Larson here. To answer that question for Commissioner Jacob, letters were sent out to the surrounding property owners of these tax forfeited properties to garner their interest, and I did not receive any word back from those adjacent property owners on these two properties.
So, Nick, I have a question then, Nick.
Yes.
Was this, and I understand Commissioner Jacobs' concern that did we put this out to the public to have the same opportunity? So was this ever advertised? Whose responsibility? Because it's city property, it's not county property. So is it the city's responsibility to put out a public notice saying that these, properties would potentially be for sale? And maybe Karen, you're still on the line. Why is the county being thrown into this when it's city property?
Because I think that, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
I believe it was because they were tax forfeited properties. Is that right, Steve? I think.
Yeah, they're tax forfeited. So technically they're owned by the state and they're managed by the county.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
So are they like officially condemned? Is that?
Frankly, we've had a couple meetings with the city building department who really wanted us to tear those down. And because this whole process has been in motion, we seem to have given some divine intervention to kind of hold off on that until we get this arrangement worked out. Because frankly, the county, from our side of things, protecting the taxpayers' interest, didn't want to spend quite a bit of money tearing this property down.
Yeah, I totally get the plan. I totally agree with the good that'll come out of it. And I guess I don't totally feel like it's just philosophical. If someone in the community says, hey, I think I've been damaged because Winona County didn't offer this to the public and they should have, I suppose they would have reason to make a case out of it. So I think it would be ultimately, we have the authority. I think what I read is that we probably do have the authority. As elected officials, we also have the luxury to decide what policy we want vote for or against. I guess I would maybe ask Attorney Sonneman, would someone from the general public could they feel like they've been disenfranchised and not had the same opportunity that we gave to these two applicants? And are we on good legal footing by I want to have justification for voting for it.
Mhm.
I'd like to be able to vote for it.
Well, I think theoretically can always be somebody who would feel disenfranchised, but as I think Commissioner Meyer said and Steve Hacken, there's been a lot of work put into this, and I see Amanda Hedlund is there from Habitat. This has been going on, this whole thing with these two properties has been going on for, if not months, over a year. And there just hasn't been that interest. And so I think legally providing affordable housing in the community and putting them back on the tax base is all good legal grounds, especially I think the policy of both the city and the county. I mean, the county supports affordable housing through many of the projects that you're involved in, such as SEMPRA, things like that. So I think there's good legal footing for this. There's always going to be somebody who may felt, cut out of any kind of options, but this has been going on for a long time and nobody stepped forward.
Okay, I'll move to approve 5.15.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Jacobs, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve 5.15, the Port Authority tax forfeited property rehabilitational program property application. Just a couple comments. I sit on the SEMPRA board, and in the past, that SEMPRA board has bought property and put houses on it for affordable housing. So I don't know if that organization, this never came up. So with that point being said, I think we need to clarify the process if these properties come ahead in the future, and somehow that part of that process includes notifying the public if any other entities are interested in the same type of arrangement, and they have to be viable and everything. So I think the process is flawed, or we don't have a process. And it's a little irritating to me if the city of Winona for years wanted these taken down. The city of Winona has their own ordinances. We do not imply our ordinances or have authority over the city of Winona. So I feel the city of Winona needs to be, held to enforcing their ordinances. So I would really encourage the group that worked on this, and of course this is coming to us as an action item without much knowledge of this working group, that somehow we set a process in place that everybody understands it, that it includes a notification to the public that these properties may be available to anyone that wants to buy them. So with that, we'll do a roll call.
I don't know if you can see I have my hand up or not.
Now I do. It came slow. Sorry. The squirrels are getting tired out here. Go ahead, Commissioner Jacob.
Okay. Yeah, and where I understand it's been in the planning process for probably a year, and everyone with nothing but great intentions. My concern is that to the public, when it comes to this agenda today, this is the first time the public probably in general is aware. So, I mean, they don't really have an opportunity to be involved or, say, hey, I got a better plan, or I can one up that. I can, we haven't given that opportunity, but I'm going to support it. I just think I agree with Commissioner Ward that in the future, the public at least needs to know what we're doing before we go ahead and vote on it.
Okay, with that, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Kavesi?
I vote in support of the motion. Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson? Commissioner Olson?
Now he is frozen.
Did we lose Commissioner Olson?
He probably muted.
No, it's not showing muted. Commissioner Olson. Well, Commissioner Jacob.
I support the motion. Aye.
Okay, and Commissioner Ward votes aye. So can we just note that we're being recorded. We just have a technical difficulty. We lost Commissioner Olson, but the motion would pass. Can somebody call Commissioner Olson and see what happened? And just as an advisory, I keep getting the signal on my screen that my internet is unstable. I see where the winds are kicking up here and stuff. I don't know if the wind affects cable, but it's unstable. All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Holte.
Mr. Olson is trying to reconnect right now.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll move on. The motion passes. It's noted that we lost Commissioner Olson in the vote. But if he comes back, we'll get his vote. Moving on. Now we're at 6.1. Receive presentation and approve resolution proclaiming National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And who's covering that one?
Sorry, me.
All right, Attorney Sonneman. Crime is down because of the COVID, correct? The way the reports I hear.
We have less people coming into the jail, yes.
And nationally.
We unfortunately, we still have domestics and DWIs, so people gotta stop doing that. But
yeah.
So
okay.
I put together a really short one-page statement. Otherwise, you would have heard, if this was a in-person meeting, you would have heard from Claire Exley, our crime victims services coordinator out of my office. But let me read our presentation here. Every year in April, the federal government's Office of Victims of Crime helps lead local communities throughout the country in their annual observances of National Crime Victims Week, which is April 19th through April 25th. This year's theme, Seek Justice, Ensure Victims' Rights, Inspire Hope, honors and respects the decisions of victims, celebrates the progress made by victim service providers, and looks forward to a resilient and hopeful future for crime victims and survivors. The Winona County Attorney's Crime Victims Services Office will be raising awareness in our community of National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Because of COVID-19, however, all of our in-person community awareness events that we had planned have been canceled, but we will be running a radio ad to spread the word about victims' rights, and we'll have a strong social media presence leading up to and during the week. We did have plans for community tables, a movie screening, a really important movie about crime victims, and an art night. So we'll hopefully do those next year. But the Crime Victims Services Office is solely responsible for meeting Minnesota's statutory obligations for notification and ensuring the rights of victims in our cases. We assist crime victims in navigating and understanding the criminal justice system while a case is prosecuted by the county attorney's office. Services to victims include court accompaniment, notification of court hearings, notification of plea proposals, assistance with victim impact statements, and assistance obtaining restitution. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to provide support and information to crime victims through virtual means. Most of the cost of the Crime Victim Services Office is provided through a state of Minnesota Office of Justice Programs Prosecutorial Services Grant. For the 2019 grant year, which started October 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2019, our office provided assistance to 646 victims with 2,655 documented contacts, which include in-person letters, phone calls, etc. And so far for the 2020 grant year, which started October 1st and through March 30th of this year, we have now served 380 different victims with 1,286 documented contacts. So we are dedicated to assisting victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime. We ask that Winona County reaffirm its commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime by proclaiming April 19th through the 25th, 2020, National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Crime happens in every community, including Winona County. And there is a resolution and a proclamation that's attached to your materials there that we're asking that you approve and for Commissioner or Chair Ward to read. So any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the resolution.
Okay, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Kavesi seconds the motion
Okay,
to approve.
Okay, Commissioner Kavesi seconds. Any other discussion? We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Kavesi?
I vote in favor of the motion. Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Commissioner Olson votes aye.
Okay, welcome back. Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, I approve.
Okay, and Commissioner Ward approves. Read the resolution into the record. Resolution 2020. Whereas the victims' rights movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the local, state, and federal levels that establish essential rights for victims. The victims' rights movement has resulted in the passage of laws at the local, state, and federal established rights of victims. The Crime Victims' Rights Act, passed here in Minnesota and at the federal level, has provided victims with ways to participate meaningfully throughout the criminal justice process. The rights of the crime victims are best protected when all participants in the criminal justice process, not only victims, are appropriately educated about victim rights. Supporting victims of crime is crucial to the U.S. justice system because our support honors the experiences of victims and allows them to find autonomy and empowerment through achieving self-defined goals. We must help victims assess justice, assistance, and the support they need to rebuild their lives. Advocacy by and for victims of crime is itself a form of seeking justice, no less than justice sought in the courts. The accomplishments of the victims' rights movement, achieved through compassion and collaboration and built on the courageous advocacy of individual victims and their families across the country, inspire us in hope of future progress and great healing. We are determined to respond to crime and violence by helping victims find not only support, recovery, and justice, but also a sense of hope for their future. National Crime Victims' Rights Week provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that accessible, appropriate, and trauma-informed services are offered to all victims of crime. Whereas Winona County and the Winona County Attorney Victim Service Office is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim service providers, and bring hope and healing to all victims and survivors. Now, therefore, the Winona County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of April 19th through the 25th, 2020 as Crime Victims' Rights Week, reaffirming Winona County's commitment to creative victim services and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation to those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may be relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. Adopted at Winona, Minnesota, this 14th day of April 2020. Winona County Board of Commissioners. All right, thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Commissioners.
And at some point, yes, you don't need to wait till next year to show us what you had prepared if it works out into some future meeting.
Sure, we can add that sometime. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. 6.2, receive COVID-19 department operations update. Karen, are you there?
I'll start with me.
Ken?
And then,
All right.
yeah, because what we're going to do is I wanted to give the department heads a brief opportunity to kind of update you on what they're doing in their various departments. One of the things that you might be interested in is that of our 294 employees, we have about 170 that are working remotely right now. And if you take into account that some of those other employees are shift employees, that's a huge portion of our workforce is working remotely, and the rest that are working in the offices and other locations and in the field are taking various precautions appropriate for their positions in terms of dealing with the contagion. Obviously, we're working with a number of groups outside of the county, staff. I know that each of the different areas is working in their respective groups. We're working on community issues. We're working on collaboration with the hospitals, anything you could possibly think of at this point that we need to do. I wanted to acknowledge the department heads because they've really stepped up along with their employees, and just you could just see the best in people when you have situations like this. And certainly our group has really responded well. I think there's a number of hurdles that we've overcome, that working together, trying to be patient, and that's very important in this particular situation. I wanted to call out specifically Maureen and her staff, because we've been inundated with a number of employee issues that come up because of the federal government's action in that area and also the state's action in that area. And when you throw in personal situations, it becomes very complex and very difficult to deal with. There are a couple items on our agenda that related to that, but they've worked very hard in trying to respond and keep people employed and productive. And I appreciate that. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that. So I know this will take a little extra time, but I'd like to give the department heads an opportunity. So Chair, if you could call on them and let them give just a couple minutes of what's going on in their department, I think that would be appreciated.
All right, and I don't want to miss anybody, so I don't see them listed here, but let's, Karen Sanis, are you with us? You're the Health and Human Service. Are you there?
Yes.
Karen?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Give us your update.
So as far as staffing goes, we have the majority of our staff working from home. That was a huge task to accomplish, getting almost 100 employees working remotely. Our support staff remain coming into the office and dispatching calls out to people, doing, getting the mail, getting applications processed, things like that. And so that was a task in itself. The other piece is I've been spending a lot of my time working with legislative groups to update policy to assist with keeping our programs up and running. So, like changes to healthcare, they're not they're not doing cutoff dates for renewals right now, things like that. Face-to-face contacts for child welfare, how, and just around that type of policy to limit contact, but still assure that kids are safe. And lots of work with families right now due to a lot of domestic violence and substance use. So those continue to roll in, but there's a few supervisors that are in the office. They're keeping the day-to-day functions running at the local area. Yes, that's my dog behind us. And so they are continuing to work, and the supervisors are really in touch with the staff and doing well. As far as the pandemic, it has been changes hour by hour, it seems like, updating policy, answering questions. People are panicking. People are calling and yelling at me, wanting me to make this stop. I can't make it stop. So just really explaining to people that it is truly in their hands if they want to slow the spread of this by staying home. So updating press releases, I get updated between 5:30 and 7 o'clock at night of any new cases that we're going to be up on the Minnesota Department of Human Services website. And then notifications of deaths, getting press releases out, keeping everybody informed. Lots of media requests right now. My husband Googled my name the other day, and I'm popping up in the Post Bulletin, interviews on KTTC, all over the place. So there's been a lot of outreach, and I think Ben Klinger is probably my new best friend. So.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that a couple things there, just to add on what Karen said. On a day-to-day basis, Karen, myself, Karen, Ben Klinger, and Jeff, and Betsy Zeller, Jeff Peterson and Betsy Zeller, are working collaboratively on organization, you know, in terms of the response and coordinating and, you know, information and all that kind of stuff. So that's a daily, if not hourly, communication that's going on as we find out what's happening. Some of what you see in the press release and so forth are things that we've already dealt with the day before or are dealing with the day before. So just keep that in mind. That is going on in the background.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep moving on. I see Bob Bamanek. I see he's on the phone. Bob.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Ward. Got a couple of quick updates for you, and these are all related to the virus in some manner. We talked last about foreclosures. We had about a dozen that were pending. The state asked that a 90-day grace period be granted, and all of them have been covered by the grace period. That doesn't mean that the foreclosure itself has gone away, but they've got that additional time. There is a 40% increase in the number of mortgages that we have recorded thus far in 2020, and that compares with the same period a year ago. The mortgages are coming into us for a couple of reasons. First, people are accessing the equity in their properties. And secondly, we've got all-time record low interest rates. So it is acting as a source of some fairly quick dollars for some folks that are in need. Wanted to mention that we have had some support during legislative phone conferences late last week for some changes in our marriage law. And the marriage law presently requires people to visit with us in person to obtain a license. And with the pandemic, that just is not an acceptable practice. So what is being considered is possibly an oral interview or oral and video. The legislators were quick to realize that all of Minnesota does not have the same technologies available. A couple of the really serious questions that come up during a marriage application process that are required to be asked in person are former names of the parties and if either has a felony that they've been convicted of. And then there are other processes in place to deal with those questions. Does not mean that the parties will not be married, but there's just protections in the law, and that's something that we judiciously follow very closely. All right, there is also a move among the legislators by phone conferences and somewhat informally late last week to give us additional authorities for electronic recording, some that we don't have presently, and it may come in such a manner that it would be available and in use for the pandemic. Also, the county could be given some conditional uses during the virus. For an example, would be county contracts that require original signatures. The county may be able to accept them electronically. All right, the last thing I wanted to mention is that we need to sincerely and seriously lobby for the statutory and specific funds that we're entitled to. It's pretty much a given at the legislature that there's going to be a shortage of dollars, and how that's going to be made up, who is going to take the hits, it's already being talked about. But finally, my office has 2 people working at the office. We are, by the governor, considered essential employees. We have 2 at home. I believe that all of our employees are doing an absolutely magnificent job. Each day at the county office building, we are receiving mail. We're receiving a lot of payments. We collect them in a number of different formats, but at the end of the day, they all have to come together. We're getting a lot of deliveries from the various delivery services. We have boxes set up for those deliveries. We have a very high number of emails, and we're having a considerable number of phone calls. So that's the update from here, and if there's any questions, I'd sure like to respond.
Thank you, Bob. I do see Commissioner Kavesi, you have your hand up. I apologize. Did you have a question of somebody?
Yeah, I appreciate the update on how the day-to-day activities are going and any new activities. But I was also curious to know if any of the activities have had to be put on like the back burner. Is there something that we're having to not emphasize or during this time because of the new activities?
I think that, are we still connected?
Yes, Bob, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I believe that we're going to be having some really challenging days coming up. I'll say that out of the last 5 Sundays I worked for, we have incredible numbers of requests for information, and some of those are related to 3 of the biggest projects thus far in 2020. And they are still taking place. They're planned. One of them is up against a real thin timeline. And I believe that we need to keep those projects going. Those are going to be lifelines in the future for employment in Winona and Winona County. And that's an area right now that has lots of unknowns in it. So that work needs to take place. Where we're going is we could have mortgage levels as they were in the mid 80s if the present trend continues, and there's a lot of thought that it will. And at that time, we had 2 additional people working in our office. We did not have the electronic recording, but what we're seeing with this big increase is a lot more manual, and we're disappointed by that. There's very little that we can do to move those to electronic documents, but I have met with 2 lenders and encouraged them to look at sending more for electronic processing with us. They're in a position to be able to do it. Some of the others that are recording with us, they're not. Even with the big numbers coming in now in paper format, we're still at 60% electronic, and that's really a big plus for us. That's among the best in Minnesota right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. That's a nicer way to say it, is what are the new challenges that you're seeing? If I appreciate Karen's updates, also Karen Sanis, and her commitment to the many collaborative groups that she participates in. And I wondered if she might comment on the challenges that she sees up ahead.
We're going to need an hour. So some of the things that I'm seeing right now that are challenges is our children that are in out-of-home placement. Right now we have several children. I think we have 12 that are awaiting adoption finalization, and we're not allowed to schedule those finalizations. So we're going to have kids remaining in out-of-home care longer, which means out-of-home placement costs are going to continue to rise. So that is going to be an issue, but we're going to really, I mean, we're going to be looking at a lot of people during economic recovery. If once we get out of this, you know, there are already increased SNAP applications, which is our food program. There's increased MFIP, which is our cash assistance program to keep people in their homes. And so I'm cautious to say that the unemployment is really gonna help with that workflow, but there's only so much in that fund at the state level. So we'll continue to see how long this goes on. It's all unknown at this point, and which is really hard for people. People's mental health are really, really suffering right now, trying to get access to mental health services. So Hiawatha Valley was really good about putting up a telemedicine site out at West Haven and some of the different areas, so they can do therapy sessions there for people that don't have cell phones or like a tablet to be able to access their therapist or see their psychiatrist. So they're also stating that admissions to the state-operated systems has decreased, which is always a good thing, but it's really going to be dependent on how long this lasts.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Karen. Moving down my list here, Mark Anderson.
Hey folks, how are you?
Have you been busy, Mark?
Well, you know, we got these things going on right now. A quick little note. Being on mute's the best idea. If you push the space bar down while you're speaking, it unmutes you, and then you can take it off. It's just a quick little deal where you don't have to use your mouse and find everything. Right. We were worked pretty diligently in getting some of the folks set up with computers that didn't have them in their homes. We repurposed 60 laptops, moved telephones out, soft phones, desk phones, cell phones, so that people could maintain communications with their work. We also used a bring your own device thought, so that if people had equipment that was up to speed, we could use that and VPN back into our systems to allow remote desktop control of their office desktop. For the staff, we went to 50%. We have 50% of the people in the office maintaining a physical presence so that they can touch and maintain computers, work with staff as necessary. And we're still open 7 to 5 in the office. We have a 24/7 on call to maintain emergencies, because this has put a little bit of a stress on our systems, but so far doing pretty well there. We have cameras, laptops, and switches available. Other small items if people need cables, connections. You know, everybody's has a slightly different setup at their home, or in the way that they're communicating. You could just look around the background and see how everybody is. We can support people with that. But even with that, we're keeping going in our standard work. We're starting a project, or working through a project with OpenGov and planning to assist them and determine what they're going to do for permitting. And we're starting a scanning project, scanning old records into LETG, keeping some of the staff that we have gainfully busy during this time. Other than that, yeah, not much going on.
Any questions for Mark? All right. Well, thanks, Mark.
Sure thing.
Let's see. Moving on, I see Dave Kramer, Highway. David.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Overall, our staff is really busy. We're effectively doing our normal work, obviously with some workarounds. So that's not quite as efficient as it would normally be, but we are, for the most part, doing business as normal in our normal functions. Maintenance is a critical sector under the governor's stay-home order, which would include road maintenance and inspections. According to Tim Ford, he says things are going smooth. We have switched some things where instead of having a crew go to a work site, you know, maybe multiple people in a vehicle, they are taking individual vehicles to job sites just to do the social distancing. Trying to work in smaller crews and trying to limit the intermixing of those crews. Trying to do tasks where they can comply with the social distancing requirements. The spring load restrictions did go off yesterday, and they will be starting their rock haul soon, and that's a really good task because they're driving their trucks and, you know, there's nobody in there with them. So that's all that work is going forward. As far as our construction program goes, under the governor's stay home order, construction is also a critical sector. Our engineering staff is working from home to the extent that they can do so. We probably have the majority of our staff working from home. Specifically, some carryover projects from last year. County Road 129 is supposed to be starting up later this month. County Road 12 in the Watoka area and the other roads there, the paving should start up next month in May. You probably saw on your agenda, you had the two contracts that were awarded today. We are completely moving forward with our construction program, and we do have a couple projects that we'll be advertising here in the next couple weeks, and those will be, after we open bids, those will go on your agenda to consider approving those. Naturally, there would be some questions on the status of our construction funding given the stay-home orders and the big hit that's taking place on a lot of sectors in the economy. the bulk of our construction funding being our state aid funds, those are essentially in the bank from last year's revenue. So those are completely in place and of no question for this calendar year. As we look toward the latter part of this year and they give us some hint of what our fundings will be for 2021, we'll obviously need to take that into account as we put together our budgets for next year. Sales tax, we are essentially planning to use this year's revenue as part of our program. There is a several month lag from the time of the economic activity to when we get those funds in the county, so we won't really see any results for a couple months here. But I'm anticipating that with things moving forward, and we do have some reserves in the sales tax account, that we should be in a good position to move forward with all of the projects that we do have budgeted for this summer that use the sales tax funds. So we do have a robust construction program, and we are fully moving forward with delivering that, and we're very busy doing that. In getting to Commissioner Kavesi's question about things on the back burner, we've had 2 retirements in recent months, 1 maintenance worker and 1 engineering technician. Our personnel staff has been obviously very busy with dealing with the issues related to the stay-home orders and such. So those have kind of been on the back burner, but we do need engineering technicians. You know, our critical time is our summer construction, and obviously the winter maintenance is for the maintenance workers. So we are looking forward to filling those, but those are, I guess, for the last couple of weeks have been on the back burner. Typically, when there's an issue like this, a potential economic slowdown, that's often coupled with stimulus, most commonly from the state level, sometimes from most commonly from the federal level, sometimes from the state level. We'll keep an eye out on that, and if there's something that we can position ourselves to take advantage of, we'll work to do that. The other thing I just want to mention, we do have our Commissioner Road Tour scheduled for June 16th. We'll just keep an eye out on what's going on in the next month here. Potentially, we'll look at rescheduling that for the fall, like many things are being rescheduled to the fall. So we'll just play that by ear and reschedule as necessary. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Dave Kramer? Thank you very much, Dave. Oh, I'm sorry. Marie,
Yeah,
Commissioner Kavesi.
I appreciate the update and the consideration that you're giving to keeping everything going. On the County Road 129 project, you said it's going to start later this month. We won't have a public meeting to notify the residents, so I just want to know that we have a plan to notify the residents if there's any road closures or what the process is. I get a lot of calls.
I guess I don't have a real good answer for that. The construction was ongoing kind of in the fall. Cold weather came early and shut us down. We've actually had the east end of the project that's gravel surface with signs posted, roads closed to through traffic. There's some a gravel surface like that with that level of traffic was, with this frost coming out, was potholing just absolutely terrible. So there actually is some you know, inhibitions to through traffic, but everyone's able to get in and out. You just might have to go out you know, towards the east rather than towards the west. But yeah, they'll be placing curb and then paving. So, you know, I think I see minimal disruptions to traffic in comparison to what they've been used to. I think, you know, people will be expecting that project to just ramp back up here in the, you know, in the coming weeks. So we did not have a specific, you know, plan for rolling out a public information meeting. It'll pretty much be picking up where we left off last fall.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Dave. Moving on my list here, Ben Klinger. Ben, are you with us? Ben Klinger.
Me.
Good morning, Ben.
Can you hear me now? All right. Good
We can
morning,
hear you.
everybody.
Yes.
All right. So there's obviously a lot of unique challenges with this pandemic. In a normal disaster, a disaster only affects a regional area. So if you need supplies, you go outside that regional area and you kind of see what you're attacking and you get supplies that way. So one of our biggest challenges have been getting personal protective supplies for all our employees as well as emergency responders in the county. I will say we were lucky in the fact that we had a cache of supplies from back in 2008 and 9 with H1N1 and the bird flu. So we've been able to use those supplies that we've stored all those years. So that's been very helpful for us. And we've also found some different ways to get some stuff. We took delivery of a 55-gallon drum of hand sanitizer, which we purchased from a liquor distillery today in La Crosse. So we were able to make some different things work there. But I've just been coordinating a lot with public health, county attorney, finance, different places. Public health has done a really good job educating me on the public health system and how that works. So being able to help out back and forth, that team's been really good to work with. Also, I have an intern, Violet DeStefano, who's been instrumental in helping with our public service announcements on Facebook and taking the notes in our various meetings so that we can provide those out to the participants and people who are unable to make them very quickly. And then Marie had asked about numbers of calls. So I had dispatch pull some numbers last week of some different call for service numbers in comparison to the year prior. So the time frame I'm talking about here is March 1st to April 9th. And then we plan on updating these weekly and providing them at our weekly emergency management meeting. So calls for service for domestic violence in 2019 from March 1st to April 9th, there was 8 calls, and this is countywide, all the departments in the county. In 2020, we've had 12 calls for service for domestics. For emotional behavioral calls, so these are usually calls of somebody in mental health crisis or somebody acting strange. In 2019, in that time period, we had 12. In 2020, in that time period, we had 22 of that style call for service. Another column, check welfares. So when somebody calls to have us check on somebody that they think is suicidal or somebody they haven't heard from or something along those lines. In 2019, we had 97 of those. In 2020, we've had 90 of those in that time period. And then the last statistic we ran were disturbances. So maybe these were a family disagreement that hasn't risen to the point of a domestic violence or other disagreement type stuff. In 2019, in that time period, we had 69 of those calls for service. And in 2020, we had 71. And lastly, to answer the what's been put on the back burner for emergency management, normally this time of year, we're working on training plans and stuff for the summer into the fall. So those have been put on hold. And then the new radios we purchased for the sheriff's office, they're programmed. It'll just be when things slow down, they'll start implementing those and putting them in cars. But right now, that's on the back burner. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Ben, you have an update meeting Wednesdays. You do an update emergency management at 6 o'clock. So anybody can join in that, correct? If commissioners.
Correct. Yep. It's the information's posted on the county website. So anybody who wants to join is welcome to.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ben. Let's see. Kay Qualley. Kay, are you with us? Kay Qualley. Good morning, Kay.
I'm here. Good morning, Commissioner Ward and Commissioners.
Good morning.
Thank you. Planning and Environmental Services, Household Hazardous Waste Center is closed for small loads. We've asked that people retain those until it reopens. But for large cleanouts for people moving or where there's been a death in the family and an estate needs to be closed out, we are doing those by appointments. In the intervening period, we're utilizing our household hazardous waste site manager, Kim Nelson, to do cart inventory for recycling carts because many of them need replacing or there may be 4 carts at a site that's paying for 2 carts. So we're trying to get our inventory numbers up to date, and that's working really well. She's efficiently updating her spreadsheets on that. Farmers Park has been posted for no gatherings, but that fishing and hiking is still open. We've only had to cancel the rental of 1 pavilion for the month of April and early May period, and the school SWC school event was canceled for the end of May. So that gets us to the end of May without canceling anything major. We've reviewed septic procedures with our septic inspection group based somewhat on Rice County social distancing, much like highway, with going out in individual vehicles and not riding together kind of thing. The planning department meeting for Planning and Environmental Services monthly meeting went on much like this meeting, and it takes a little bit to get used to, but it really worked well. People are providing benchmarking compared to their work plans, so I get updates from them and I can see and adjust workflow that way. The Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment will be meeting in May, possibly in this type of format. We will have multiple petitions that would go forward at that time. There have been concerns expressed on how we get public participation portions of things. We would get call-in phone numbers for the petitioners and any associated project contractors and that kind of thing, as well as for the press and the public. We have also been working with administration and IT very closely and we're grateful to IT, of course, for their help in allowing us to work from home, and to we're working with them for upgrades to OpenGov on increasing efficiency for the department, and this crisis has certainly illustrated the need for that. The EDA right now, we postponed the April meeting. I suspect that we will be having a loan committee followed by a phone meeting of the EDA board to talk about loans that might be needing some forbearance for a period of time if they are closed at this time. Otherwise, after just maybe a half week of people getting adjusted, I think things are going well. We are tuning in on Ben Klinger's updates on emergency management. Should we be called upon to help in any way, we're certainly available to do that. Eric and Ross and I are taking turns going into the office, scanning. Feedlot registrations are coming in rapidly, and scanning in petitions and moving checks around and bills around with finance, and that's going very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Kay? All right. Seeing none, moving on. Let's see, Steve Hacken. Morning, Steve.
There we go.
There we go. We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Right now, the assessor's office, this is border review season for us. We've had 8 of our districts cancel their meetings. It's their choice, not our choice. And we've provided call-in and video hookups to do these meetings. The ones we've done have been okay. Some districts just said, no, we're just not going to hold them. So districts that don't have border review, they go to open book like a number of our districts have, and the county assessor's office can deal with them up until about June 9th. So I think it's one part of it that's good is property owners aren't pigeonholed into a, hour and a half time that they can deal with stuff. They have lots of time. So when this goes over, they can talk to us. One of our challenges right now is we can't go out and look at property. So people that call in, we're pretty much having to say, well, we'll get your number as soon as we can go look, we'll go look. But as of now, we can't. So that's been a little different for us. We certainly encouraged all of our town boards and city councils that if any of their folks have issues, please contact us, because we want to do what's right for people. And this is unique, it's different, and we're kind of learning as we go here. All of my staff's at home. They can get their phone calls at home. They all have computers at home. And we've got some projects we're working on right now that are trying to keep them out of mischief.
Good. Any questions for Steve?
I got a question. Steve, have you not shaved since this pandemic?
That's true. I can't get a haircut, so I assumed I might as well not shave at the same time. And, it's really white. I don't know.
It acts as a filter.
There we go.
It's a filter. All right. Any other questions for Steve? All right. Thanks, Steve. Sandra Sukla, are you with us?
Yes. Can you hear me now, though?
Yes, we can, Sandra.
Okay, great. I guess we'll start with the Auditor Treasurer Department. We are all here, all three of us, collecting taxes. Actually, since April 1st, the kind taxpayers of the county have given us almost $2 million in taxes. We are also doing everything else we do in our office with recordings and such. If we do have any downtime, we're catching up on projects we didn't do before we moved from the government center. We still had a lot of scanning to do. One of the things we are very concerned about is our upcoming elections, whether or not we'll need to change the way we manage those, trying to eliminate human contact. We're waiting from some guidance from the Secretary of State's office, whether there's been kind of rumblings that they may transition the election to a mail ballot. That would be very challenging with almost 29,000 registered voters, but I guess we'll deal with it if we need to. License Center. There are two people at the License Center taking care of drop-off titles and tabs because the government did not give people an extension on their tabs. As many of you know, they did give a 2-month extension for driver's licenses and also push the Real ID deadline out a year to October of 2021. And as far as concerns we have is when the License Center is actually reopened for business with face-to-face contact is keeping our staff safe, because they have as much public contact as anybody you'll find out in the public, at the grocery stores and convenience stores. So we're working with maintenance and administration to make sure that we have things in place when we are ready to reopen, because I think we're going to have a pretty high volume of business at the License Center.
Okay. Any questions? Is that it? Okay, that's that area. Anything else, Sandra?
Not unless somebody's got a question for me.
Any questions? All right. Okay. Thank you, Sandra. Is anybody from law enforcement? Any law enforcement on the call? No? Okay. Pat Moga, finance. Is Pat still on the call? Okay, okay. Maureen Holty, personnel. Maureen. Oh, Pat, I see Pat. We'll go back to Pat. Pat,
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you, Pat. I can. What's up in finance?
In finance, we have 3 staff members that are working in the office, 5 are at home. We're just getting along. We're basically getting everything out to everybody, and then they basically turn around, scan it back to us, and then we gather it, take it, forward. We've gone through 1 payroll. We got paid Friday so that worked out well. We'll have another payroll coming up here next week. So seems like things are working well.
Good. Any questions for Pat? All right, thanks, Pat.
Thanks.
Maureen Holty.
Madam Chair, hello.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's new in the world of personnel?
Well, I think there's too much new in the world of personnel. We are doing our best with what we have here to stay on top of all of the latest and greatest law changes. As you can see, we've got a few things on the agenda to go over. We are very busy with the whole COVID-19 and the needs of our employees. In particular, those who have childcare concerns, and people who don't have enough time to get them through this shutdown period. So we are being kept very busy with that. We are having some hiring challenges in the sense of we are unable to complete the background checks, the fingerprinting, those kind of things because it's not within our control. The other organizations are either shut down or not working as well. Interviews, we're having to do those a little differently. We're not able to do the face-to-face interviews, so it's different, but it's working. It's working. As far as the things that are being put on the back burner, our wellness events, any countywide training, some of the hiring is postponed due to the limitations that we have to move things forward, or that we just don't have the capacity as far as time. Classification reviews, policy reviews, grievances, things like that. So we're continuing to do our best.
All right, good, good, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Holty? All right, thank you, Maureen. Karn, did you have anything? Karn Sanan from Attorney's Office, did you have anything to add? You've been an active participant. Karn?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we can.
Just on the kind of court side and law enforcement part of the work we do, we have been working with all the law enforcement agencies in the county to kind of coordinate both the incoming volume of people who might otherwise come into jail. So law enforcement is now issuing basically summonses, tickets to come to court at a later date on many of the crimes that might otherwise come into the jail, but not any serious crimes. Obviously, we're continuing to have those people arrested and brought into jail. So that helps keep the volume low coming into the jail. We've also worked with the courts and our colleagues on the defense side to look at the jail population and reduce that to the point where we're still maintaining public safety, but we have really low numbers in the jail right now, which helps. I don't think I'm not aware of. I would be one of the first to know that we're having a COVID problem in the jail, and we're not. So the jail is really working well. Steve Buswell and Ron and his folks are doing a great job here and also in Houston County. But we have been getting, as you all know, letters from people saying, why aren't you letting everybody out of jail? And I'm responding to those as we get those, mostly by email. It seems like a coordinated effort from the ACLU because they all look alike, but they're different people. So there's just simply people that you cannot let out of jail for public safety reasons. We're also coordinating with the courts to hold the hearings that are necessary. They call it super priority cases. That includes juveniles, CHIPS cases or child protection cases, and the serious in custody cases. We have first appearances every morning still, but we either have a virtual judge. The judges have also gone to a system where there's a virtual judge, or we get one of our local judges, but they rotate. And so they've set up a system where there's many of them are at home, but I do have staff here at the office. As you can tell, I'm in my office right now. But I've also have people working at home and then some alternating, which has worked really well. We've always been a 24/7 office. We continue to be that, but it's heightened, obviously, with the COVID. And I do want to throw out a very big thank you to Maureen and her staff and Mark Anderson and his staff for getting us set up so that my staff can do that. They just hook into their own computers here at work, but they can do it from home. So we are continuing to process criminal cases, civil cases, you name it. We had to, in terms of back burner or actual cancellation, we had to cancel our law day for 6th graders that we usually would do at the end of this month. Drug court, for instance, is virtual now. And we haven't actually had a court, but we have a team meeting, and we're continuing to monitor those folks in treatment court. And we tend to get calls about interpreting the governor's executive orders. So we do respond to citizens and businesses who wonder if they can stay open or can they reopen. So we're trying to help out interpreting that. And unlike some other jurisdictions that are issuing tickets for violations of the stay at home, my philosophy is let's try to educate them first, and if there's multiple violations, then we'll ticket at them. We did have our first case, though, of a defendant who coughed on a law enforcement officer to the point where there was saliva on the officer's forehead. So we did charge that person with 4th degree assault of a law enforcement officer. So we're very vigilant on that as well. So unfortunately, we've had our first case where somebody's done that. But that's pretty much it.
All right. Any questions of Attorney Sonneman? All right. Thank you, Karen. I saw a little note pop up. Brian Verding, the census. Are you there, Brian? Brian. I apologize. I saw a little note. He was trying to give us an update on the census, but I don't think he's still there. Brian? Did I hear somebody?
I don't see him anymore.
Okay. All right. It's important the census is going on, and it's going to be more important. Did I miss anybody? You think I got everybody? Good. That was good information. I would just ask all the people and departments and staff to take good notes of what's worked, what hasn't worked, how we can change. Hopefully none of us ever have to go through this again in our lifetime as elected or as employees, but to take good notes and compile, what worked, what didn't work, and what you could see as being changed, as being helpful. I think, yes, thank you to all the staff. I've always said, my children have always questioned how I do all this. And it says, you always surround yourself by good staff. I have good people. And it really is, good to know that you're all pulling through this and doing your work. Thank you. Ken, back to any other COVID update?
Yeah, just a quick note. Finance set up a number of COVID codes so that we could track expenses. So we're tracking the expenses for anything related to COVID in the case that we might be able to be reimbursed in the future. So that is one of those note-taking portions, although it's a financial aspect of it. But yeah, it's something we're doing. So.
That's good. That's exactly, having dealt with FEMA disasters, that's exactly what we need to do. Thank you. That's a good thing. All right. Anybody else have any questions? I see Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I would have said this at the end, but since the department heads are on the phone, I'll say it quickly now. Thank you to you. Thank you to your staff. You have my gratitude. You have my support. You have my respect. And at any level, administration on down, if there are things that you need from me for support, I hope that you'll let me know. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on. 6.3. Discuss, modify, approve resolution for temporary abatement of penalty and interest for late property tax payments on certain properties.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do you think we could have a 5-minute break?
I would encourage that.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll take 5. Do we just leave everything like it is and then just come back? Don't push any buttons. It's working now. All right, 5 minutes or less. Heidi, I need more coffee.
Yeah, your closet's right there.
Can somebody tell Marcia we can't hear her?
Okay. Am I unmuted? Can you hear me now? Okay. So everybody raise your hand if you're back. Let's see. I see Steve. I see Marie. I see Karen.
My
Greg
real
back.
hand? My real hand?
Yeah, either one. Ken, I see Ken. Where's Greg?
I see him. He's waving.
You see him? Is
Yeah,
he there?
he's waving.
Oh, okay. I don't see him. For some reason, I only see 3 people at a time. I don't know why that is. I don't know. Technology. It's working better than I had anticipated. All right. Oh, Steve
Get a
just left.
gallery view.
I'm sorry, Greg, what?
Gallery view.
Gallery
Then you see
view?
everybody.
Is that up on the top?
Yes, top right hand. You got speaker view or gallery view.
I don't see that. I see a little, let's see. No, that didn't do anything. No, okay, all right, it's okay, as long as everybody raises their hand. So we got everybody back?
Yes, yes.
All right. Heidi, I got a good cup of coffee. Thank you. All right. So we are at item 6.4. I'm sorry. 6.3, discuss, modify, approve resolution for temporary abatement of penalty and interest for late property tax payments on certain properties. All right. Ken, did you want to?
Yep, I've got my hand up. Yeah,
Okay.
This was briefly discussed at the last meeting, and I added the normally we would probably go through a process of putting it on the agenda, discussing it, then bringing back a resolution if you were interested. But in this case, because of the April, the upcoming deadline on the May 15th deadline for property tax, we felt that it was appropriate to put the resolution together and give the opportunity to actually pass it if you agree, or amend it, or decline to act on it. So that's why the full resolution is on the agenda. Karen and I put together what we assumed would be probably kind of the framework for it. This particular one applies for waives penalties and interest till July 15th. It excludes escrow accounts, and that's about it. So Sandra's on the line, hopefully that she can weigh in. She did contact the other taxing bodies to see if they had any objections. Pat Moga has indicated we can, and Sandra have indicated we can survive the couple of months with less tax revenue. Sandra's indicated she'll probably do some kind of an interim settlement once we get the receipts in, if you decide to go waive them till July 15th. So anyway, that's kind of the preface for this. So we wanted to let you have an opportunity to kind of discuss this. It's been going around at the professional associations, and the states talked about it. The state kind of at least our initial understanding was that they kind of pushed back and said, well, you have the authority to do it if you want to. So I'm not sure that they're going to necessarily do it at the state level. And from there, I'll let you guys discuss the issue.
All right. I see Commissioner Meyer.
Thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you and I were both in attendance at the Minnesota Intercounty Association, and this particular action was the one that was of consensus, at least at that meeting.
Yes.
And in general, I support this. My question has to do with the other jurisdictions that are also relying on this money. So to say that we can make it by for the 2 months, do we owe it to the townships and the cities and the school districts to at least get their take on what we're planning to do before we move ahead?
Yeah, we did that, and
Great.
Sandra can provide that information. Sandra, are you there?
All the taxing, I did contact all of the other taxing jurisdictions in the county and had approximately a third of them reply back to me. Only 2 of them really expressed concern with not receiving their full normal settlement that's associated with the May deadline for taxes. The others said, you know, they will eke by, or they had adequate cash flows. That is why I guess, you know, there's always 3 settlements. One happens June, one happens December, and then one happens the following year in January. So I guess what I kind of decided is that probably early August, mid-September, or mid-August, early September, we may do an interim tax settlement to help those, well, to help everyone actually. We'll actually do it for everyone, not just for those that indicated they'd have cash flow issues. We just want to be consistent.
Okay. Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, so I agree with wanting to be consistent. Of course, I've heard from my rural, maybe farming constituency on, you know, where they're at with not being able to market a lot of their crops and so forth, or milk or whichever product they're producing. But we certainly couldn't say this is affecting rural more than it's affecting city. It's affecting everyone. So in my view, it's said in the resolution, certain properties. I don't know how you would say certain properties. To me, it seems like it would be more likely all properties. And there's been times where I've questioned the amount of reserves that the county has, and we've brought those down. And in the last couple of years, I've backed off on my voting position that we need the reserves we have. But if the reserves are for an emergency, what other than what we have right now is ever going to be considered an emergency? And likewise, the townships that and city councils that I attend throughout my district, most of those do have, you know, they do their financials just like we do, and most of them have pretty good reserves. So it feels to me like this is exactly why the government keeps those kind of emergency funds available. This is an emergency, and if we don't use those funds for these purposes now, then why are we really holding on to those funds? So, and this would only be delaying the payment. I guess we're not saying we've forgiven it. We're saying delay the payment. And I have had people ask me to completely forgive the payment. So, but those are some of my thoughts on the issue.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, that was my question about certain properties, how that's defined. Does that mean that any property that does not have an escrow account would be exempt from penalties? Are there any other groups that are exempt from penalties? And I have other questions too. I don't know if we're building up, if this is going to come back, because it seems like state and federal taxes are due now on July 15th also. So it's almost like a balloon mortgage payment coming up for people. So we may have to monitor this as it goes along. And my last point is that there are programs, I've read some on this from NACO and from other organizations, called a temporary assistance note, and they provide short-term loans because they know that it's only available for counties and cities in this position that they know we will receive the revenue, but it's delayed. And those loans are apparently at around 1%. So I just didn't know if we were considering, that kind of action as well. So those are my three questions. Certain properties, is that everybody except escrow accounts? The temporary assistance notes option, and the question about revisiting this since all of the taxing bodies are changing their dates to July 15th. So thank you.
So thank you, Commissioner Kvassi. Sandra or Ken, can you answer those questions?
If I understand them correctly, yes, I know that there are other counties that are actually putting conditions on who can pay late. I specifically asked Mr. Fritz not to do that just because it becomes cumbersome to police that. And then I'm not really sure what, yes, the escrows will have to pay on May 15th because obviously those folks have been having their money taken out of their checking account by their bank all along. But your other questions, Marie, would you mind repeating them?
I can answer the one, well, a couple things. On the escrows, for instance, we have about 30% of our taxes are done through escrow. So that gives you some idea of the 70% would be eligible to be waived until the July 15th term. We collect the money for the state, so that July 15th portion of the property tax is collected through us. So that's the issue of synchronization with that tax should be, I don't see that there's going to be an issue there unless Sandra understands it differently than me. The notes that you're talking about from NACO, those typically are if a county's in a position where they need to borrow money because they don't get the tax receipts in. So we're not in that position at this time. We do have a reserve, and as long as that reserve's available and we can use it and it meets our cash flow needs, we wouldn't be in a situation where we would have to ask or go out for some kind of temporary assistance note. Should we have a flood in the middle of all this, it could be a little different, and I would certainly hope that would never happen. But we are at the point where we can, I think, manage for a couple months. And Sandra and Pat have both looked at our cash flows and our cash reserves. So, but another emergency on top of that could put us in a situation where we would have to go out to ask for temporary assistance.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ward, can I address?
Yes, yes, Attorney Sonneman.
Commissioner Kvasi's questions, and I think Commissioner Jacob also had some concerns about use of the word certain. When I drafted this, it is, to identify that there are, we're not excluding everybody from paying their taxes, and that's why we left in the escrowed property. So it really is a more legal term of art to say that, there are literally certain individuals and business properties that would be eligible for this, and essentially it's everybody except the escrowed properties. But we do have that catch-all. If you look at the last whereas of the resolution, anybody who does have a hardship, just as they can now, they can seek a reduction or abatement of any property taxes, costs, penalties under the statutory authority that's already in the statute. So the resolution is to there are these properties and business and individuals that we would be seeking, or we would have an abatement of their penalties for this period of time, except for the escrowed property. But there is that catch-all that if somebody does have some struggles, and even in escrowed property, I guess, they can, ask for that consideration. So.
Okay. Commissioner Kavesi, you still have your hand up. Did you have more questions?
I'll take my hand down, so.
Okay, that's all right. That's all right. Any other discussion? Well, I've had calls from both the ag community and the Main Street businesses, and I think this is exactly what we should be doing, being that we do have reserves, and it is an extraordinary different situation for every household to manage this. I just think we need to leave the door open. It is a little that future discussions, because we have 2 more payments and 2 more times, households in October and farms in November. The discussions I've been part of, I think it's encouraging that on the national news, we're start talking about how do we reopen America, making a plan for that, and that's going to be critical. But we all know and can identify that Main Street America and rural America is going to look different or respond different when we get through this. So I think it's the right thing to do. I do encourage everybody that can pay to pay them. And we'll say a big thank you. It's hard to incentivize to pay at this time, but if you can, please do it, and it'll put less of a burden on everybody else. But I guess I would be entertaining, if no other discussion. Steve, I'm sorry. I see Commissioner Jacob has his hand up now.
Yeah, you stated just what I was going to state, is that if you're in position to pay your taxes at their normal schedule, that would certainly be helpful. If we move the deadline back, it's to provide people who can't pay some flexibility. So if you can pay, yeah, but that's you said just what I was going to say.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Jacob. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes, I have 2 questions. One is, did we consider any option for like quarterly payments, because that may assist people? I realize that's more paperwork and more staff time. And the other question is, Sandra had said that there were.
You muted.
You muted yourself somehow in the middle.
Yeah.
You are muted.
You're muted, Marie.
We can't hear you.
Okay. All right.
No, I just wanted to know about the 2 taxing bodies that expressed concerns to Sandra. Do they have other options so that they can continue doing business? So we're not going to put anybody out of business by delaying this.
Well, the one is one of the school districts, and they indicated, they have bond payments to make in June, as well as continue to pay staff over the summer. And the other one was a city, and I think I'm going to just see exactly what their concerns were rather than kind of ad lib. Just bear with me while I find the response.
Also, I have a message that I'm running low on my battery, so I've got to do some changing around here. So bear with me.
Yeah, the city that expressed, I guess, the most concern said they have bond payments due. And I mean, I have not heard anything about any of those types of institutions extending deadlines. So I guess if I could ask to kind of keep your ears open, if you do hear of anything, pass it along to me so that I can pass it along to them. Because, I mean, the only way we're going to get through this is working together.
With that comment of working together, just so the public understands, the state, this is county by county. So if you own properties in multiple counties, don't assume that it carries over. Each county is, by statute, has the authority to delay the penalties and the interest. So the state legislature is not taking any uniform action, which is, in my opinion, unfortunate, but it is each county. So you do need to be aware that this may not apply to other counties that you owe property taxes to.
Not to
Madam
mention
Chair?
other states.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yes, okay. So I know that the Olmsted County Board decided to delay until their next meeting. I am certainly in favor of this. I have concerns for those other jurisdictions. And I don't know if waiting a couple weeks helps us to get some better answers or lobby our legislators, or I'm only suggesting that it might, not that I oppose it, but that it might help us to get some better answers for those who are depending on the money and can't wait a couple months.
Commissioner Olson.
Sandra, would the escrowed payments coming in be enough to suffice for these other jurisdictions that have concern? Do you have a percentage, or do you know approximate?
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a dollar figure I can give you with any, accuracy. Like when Ken stated 30%, that's 30% of our parcels are escrowed.
Okay.
The other thing we have to consider is we collect tax for everybody. So say, my taxes consist of the city, the Port Authority, et cetera, et cetera. I can't really with any accuracy predict, well, 861 is going to get 50% of their taxes collected first half. That's a great unknown.
Okay, just a thought.
A pretty big beast. Yeah, no, and I'm glad. I'd love to explore options because I want to make this work and be very painless. So,
Ken, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's kind of hard. It depends. Even if we could, well, we can't figure out the amount of money that they're going to get. Plus, we don't know what each agency's financial situation is. So, in one situation, they may need $100,000 to meet their obligations, and in another situation, it could be millions. So, we could ask for more information, but I'm not sure. Typically, in this situation, if you're a city or if you're a county, you would do tax anticipation notes if you really felt that you weren't going to be able to come up with it. And you're doing basically a bridge loan for a couple months. Most banks and other agencies, lending agencies, or as Marie pointed out, a lot of the professional agencies have created these programs so that you can go out to that because they know that you're a good source of paying it back because it's based on future tax revenues. So there's usually not a real problem. And with the interest rate environment today, you're not going to pay a lot of interest for 2 months of taxes that you haven't received yet if you're actually in that boat. But we could ask for more information to make sure we're not putting anybody out.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, in the same way I would have concerns about treating one property differently than other people's property and who gets a delayed payment and who doesn't. I would have the same concern with that we might say a couple districts that are under our taxing authority, a couple school districts or city councils or townships, that we would treat them differently than the rest. I feel like at the rate things have been changing over the last 30 to 60 days, I would be comfortable voting for this today and delaying, and then who knows what the federal or state government is going to do in the next 60 days. But if we're offering relief to our citizenry. I think that bolsters the chance of state or federal offering relief to us in some form. So I feel like the tax date is coming up very soon, and delaying it, I'd rather move forward with it today than to push it up against a tight timeline.
Yeah, well, I would agree. I think today, in my mind, today is just fine. We heard Karen Sanis and a number of our health people talk about the mental health, the stress that we're putting under people. And if we can eliminate one of those stress factors, even for a short time, it speaks well of this, this county's compassion for our property taxpayers. Any other discussion? Would anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson to approve the resolution. Is it a resolution? Yes. The resolution is presented to delay a temporary abatement of penalty and interest for late property taxes. Roll call vote. Commissioner Kavesi?
I vote in favor of the motion. Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, I approve.
And Commissioner Ward, aye. All right, passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on, 6.4, receive update on delay to Minnesota Department of Human Services. And is Ken, are you taking this one?
If Karen's not there, I can give you some basic information. I mean, the legislature hasn't acted on it yet, and we're still holding payments. Although the DHS did send through an invoice that included current payments and previous payments. So Pat was noticed that, and we're only paying the portion that's current and not the portion that they're claiming is a back payment. Other than that, there hasn't been any change in whether we have to pay it or not.
All right. Any discussion on, let's see, do we need to take act? No, is there action?
No, that's just an update. Yeah.
Just update. All right. Any questions on that item? Marie, did you get back on?
I see her.
Oh, okay. Okay, I couldn't make that function.
I'm on.
Okay, all right, good. Moving on, 6.5, review, approve Families First Coronavirus Response Act, Employee Paid Leave 7.21. And is Maureen with us?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
All right, you want to just give us a summary here, other than what's in the packet?
Okay. In a nutshell, this policy is being provided as a means to give some guidance to our organization and our employees about the act and what is available for them to take during this period of time. The policy is only through December 31st of 2020, and then only our regular policies will apply. The important part that I would like to clarify for the board is that this really is providing up to 80 hours of paid sick leave time for employees to use for the COVID-19 situation. That is above and beyond any time that they have on the books. That is something that is basically out of the county's coffers, if you will. Then the other part of the expanded FAMLA, the Family and Medical Leave Act, is 10 weeks at 2/3 pay. Again, this is above and beyond what our policies would normally provide for our employees, and this is part of the act. So this just lays out how we would do it and what the employees would need to do in order to apply for it. Any questions?
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah. If I understand from reading this correctly, It is at our expense, and I'm kind of wondering if you have any kind of an idea of how much you think that'll run. And then, I mean, we don't really have a choice. We are legally required to do this. And not that I don't think it's the right thing to do, I do. We need ill people to not come to work, so.
Correct. I do not have an estimate of how much this may cost. We are just starting to see the employees come forward with requests. I would say we probably have, probably a dozen requests right now. It varies from the Paid Sick Leave Act to the extended or expanded FAMLA. The key difference is that the Expanded Family and Medical Leave Act is only for childcare. The first 2 weeks, the up to 80 hours, is for anything really related to COVID. So just so that there's an understanding, we're going to see more utilization of the up to 80 hours of the paid sick leave being used than we will probably see of the family and medical leave childcare piece.
Okay, Ken, you have your hand up.
Yeah, one interesting thing about the legislation was I believe the federal government paid for it or through tax credits. So in other words, an employer who's in the same situation can use, file against their taxes as part of their tax process. Unfortunately, county governments don't pay taxes in that way. And so we're kind of left out in the cold. I'm sure this is an issue that'll be talked about with AMC and other agencies as we go forward. We're tracking time and stuff, and this will be another expense that's related to COVID, that if it doesn't get paid, we'll act with our other counties to try to get reimbursed in some way. But whether that'll happen or not, we don't know at this point, because it's a federal action, but it's going to affect us if we don't find some way, if the state doesn't decide to make us whole, or the federal government.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And I saw that NACO had sent out emails requesting us to lobby on this, on behalf of this. Yeah. So
we need a motion. I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacob.
I'll move to approve 6.5.
Okay.
Commissioner Kavesi, second the motion to approve 6.5.
Okay, we have a motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to approve 6.5, and that's an employee paid leave 7.21. Any further discussion? Oh, Chris? Commissioner Meyer? No.
No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We'll do roll call. Commissioner Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Commissioner Olson votes aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, I approve.
And Commissioner Ward, I approve. Okay, that carries. Thank you. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, moving on, 6.6. Have we all got enough battery to continue, or?
I'm plugged in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. I thought maybe we could postpone this one, Ken.
Yeah, I switched to plug in.
Ken, the computer's not working. It's not working.
Can't hear me, right?
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Okay, I'm sorry. We got to have a little, I've always said government, we have to have a little humor. So I'm sorry, bear with me. This stool is getting really hard. I don't have a comfortable chair. 6.6, discuss approve county administrators 2020 compensation. All right. And Ken put a recommendation out there.
I've got a hand up if you can.
Oh, Commissioner Jacob. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to propose something that looks a little bit different than what the administrator proposed here. I don't know how personnel would deal with 5 days extra vacation, but we've moved all other positions in the county to average. So the proposal I'm going to make is that we move the administrator to average, and then we don't approve the additional 5 days of vacation. That would be consistent with what we're doing with all the rest of the positions throughout the country.
Okay. Discussion with that Is that a motion or that you're just bringing that forward for
Okay,
discussion?
I'll make that a motion, yes.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob to raise the county administrator's salary to average, which, if I'm reading this right, it would be $154,394 and
Correct.
no additional vacation days. Is that correct? Okay, do I have a second? Do I have a second? I see nobody's hands raised, so the motion fails due to the lack of a second. Further discussion? Commissioner Olson.
In the past, Ken, maybe you can refresh my memory. During the last salary increase, we did it from date of hire. We didn't make it go back to the first of the year. Now this is just a cost of living increase according to your memo, the 2.5%, which would go back to the first of the year. Am I correct on that?
Well, actually, when my anniversary date's in September, and a couple, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, it was when Jim Pomeroy was on the board. You changed the retroactive date to January 1st. So basically, it at that time it would have been retroactive to September because we were talking about it some time after that, and so it was changed to the first of the year. So in that case, actually, it was shortened. So we've been using the first of the year since then.
Okay.
I think that was last year and then this year.
Okay, Commissioner Kavesi?
Yeah, I just have a concern following from our budget discussion previously. I noticed the governor and the state commissioners have all voluntarily taken a 10% salary raise. And I know there's a significant
Decrease,
number,
yeah.
there's a significant number of CEOs, probably about at least 6 in Minnesota, that are taking temporary salary decreases. So I wasn't sure if we needed to discuss that option, and for a future agenda, or along with discussing that option, I would propose that commissioners, or I'd be willing to take a 10% salary decrease as a commissioner. So.
I think we would need we would need some review maybe by Karen about, I don't think you can set your salaries now at this time of the year in terms of the commissioners. Is that there's only certain times you can do that, right, Karen?
I'm not sure. I'd have to research that. In terms of, is it set as part of the budget or not? But I can look into.
You have to set it before there's an election coming up at a certain time, and there's some parameters we'd have to research.
Yeah. I'll take a look at that.
Okay, any other, Commissioner Kavesi?
I didn't know if Mr. Fritz has any comments about the governor and the commissioners and the CEOs in regards to our recent budget discussion.
Well, I think that, certainly providing an example to people is a good thing. And actually, in my recommendation, I was willing to take the 2.5% that the standard contracts were given, along with some additional time. I think you have to be a little, I'm not a politician, I'm not an elected official. I'm an employee of the county board. And as such, this would have normally been, or could have been, resolved earlier in the year. It's just bad timing that it's coming before the board at this point. We went through the process of doing the evaluation this year, which is fine. And then following that evaluation, it's typical to put on some kind of a compensation increase. We're not going to go back, I assume, and ask any of the other department heads or elected officials or staff to take a decrease because of the COVID situation. We're not a private company. We're not in the same situation as CEOs. And I think the fact that I didn't ask for the average, which is significantly more than what I'm compensated now, was my attempt to try to show that, salary's not everything when it comes to public service. I think I've done that. I think, it's a different situation than private sector, and I think you need to look at that.
I can put my 2 cents in. Ken is probably the only person I can institute my pay for performance idea. And I think after his performance review by all of us and from my standards, I would be in a very big world of hurt without Ken at the helm right now, even going into this COVID-19. All the great work he's done with human services and all the other departments of moving us and doing the things that he's done for Winona County. I would definitely support what Mr. Fritz put forward in his memo. Now, going forward, if this COVID-19 and our economy does not, change it, and we're greatly hampered, when we talk about all the other electeds and union contracts and everything, then we'll need to have a serious discussion of where all that goes, depending on how this country bounces back. But I would be very supportive of what Mr. Fritz put forward. I feel he's doing a very good job, excellent job in my opinion, and is doing what we've asked him to do. And I don't disagree with Commissioner Kavesi as us as commissioners. It's really unfortunate or fortunate, we don't have sick days that we can volunteer or this pay thing. Karn can look into it. But yes, we could do our part too. But I would be, I guess I'll make the motion to, wait, can I make the motion? Yes, didn't we change our rules?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation made by the county administrator for the pay for, I guess it's pay for 2020. Yeah, 2020 compensation. Do I have a second?
I will second the motion.
Marie, okay. Steve, Commissioner Jacob, you second it?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a second. Marie, or Commissioner Kavesi, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I still had a question before the motion, but knowing that it's retroactive back to January 1st, and knowing that, our budget is unsure going forward, I didn't know if we could postpone this discussion to a later date or, continue. I do appreciate the work, especially the additional work during this time period. And I know that, Mr. Fritz serves us all very well. It's just I think he said it's bad timing. So I wasn't sure about our finances going forward.
Any other discussion?
I would like to add, as far as the recommendation goes, my issue would be with the additional vacation. That we have 30-year employees at the county that don't get that much vacation, not to, in all equitable fashion. Adding more vacation is a benefit that we don't give to others. And I'm certainly, Mr. Fritz has earned his keep, but vacation is an issue that I take issue with.
Okay, any other discussion?
I agree. I would be, we're discussing the 2.5% and not the additional vacation.
I think the motion is for both.
Right, the motion, correct. The motion is to accept the recommendation of both the 2.5 and the 5 days. And again, if we would have had this discussion earlier in the year, we probably, it would have been a different discussion. Commissioner Jacob.
So the employees that don't receive the additional 5 days of vacation, they all are under union contracts and they've negotiated out exactly what's fair. And I'm a believer in being fair with everybody. And anyhow, Commissioner Fritz is already looking at not quite 10%, but $10,000 less than what average is. If 5 extra days of vacation helps to make him more comfortable, I think that furthermore, the times that I've seen him on vacation, it's not like he really doesn't do his job. If something comes up, he answers the email. Yeah, I feel like at a minimum, he's asking for $10,000 less and 5 extra days of vacation, which I think I calculated out to around $2,800. It's not anywhere near the $10,000. That would be fair and equitable, like we've done with. You can see Karen Sonoman's face there. All the department heads, they've all been moved to average. So I just think we need to be fair with everybody.
Commissioner Meyer.
Oh, I do have my hand up. Goodness
Yeah,
sakes.
you got your hand up.
Okay, so I certainly do support the 2.5% increase. I likewise I'm kind of inclined to say I would just go with that and not the extra vacation days at this point.
Commissioner Olson.
And Ken, maybe you can educate me as far as your years of service and vacation that's accrued. I think we bumped your vacation from day one up to a limit, and in response to Steve Jacob, not all employees of the county are union, but they all kind of follow the union guideline when it comes to non-union employees. So,
yeah. So, Greg, to answer your question, when we negotiated my contract, it was with the maximum vacation accrual, and there was some vacation put in the bank. If you recall, at the time, I accepted a lower salary than was anticipated by the board by about $10,000. That was part in lieu of, or for me, it was because you were willing to put it in terms of vacation rather than the money. When it comes to whether people are unionized or not, we use the same strategy across all the unions plus the the elected officials, and then and the non-union employees as well, that we use the average for our for our benchmark for compensation. So when you're looking at, if this was strictly a fairness issue and not a timing issue, I believe that it would be appropriate for me, or it would fall right in line with what everyone else asked for, is to get the average. I thought that one way of allowing the board to negotiate a package that didn't rely so heavily on direct cash compensation was to provide some additional vacation time. And the one thing I'd like to point out with respect to this discussion, this isn't like the other employees. I have a specific contract with the county, and it doesn't have to follow the rules of the other contracts. It's a negotiated deal. It's a negotiated contract. So, to say, well, it should be this or should be that, it's really something where we need to work together to come up with something that works for all of us. And I thought I provided something that was significantly less than what I could have asked for, or in the case of how we compensate everyone else, would have been appropriate. So, timing, notwithstanding the timing of things, which I think is just, I don't know what you do about that. But at some point, we're going to put the budget together for the fall, and the county's going to have to continue to operate. And yeah, there may be areas where we have to cut back because of the impact of COVID. But then again, if we get reimbursed down the road for some of these expenses, it may not be as significant as you'd think. Our revenue streams are interesting because we rely mostly on things that tie to programs and so forth, with the exception of the property tax. The property tax is only a certain portion of the total budget, and whatever you decide that it needs to be is what it's going to be. So I think it's a little unfair in my mind to take this situation. I mean, if you wanted to delay it and put it off until after all this is over with, you know, I don't have a objection to that. It would take out, I think, this unique situation, you know, and that's fine. But I think that some of the discussion we're having is a little disheartening for me. So,
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I want to just go back and look at, we did the performance evaluation, and there wasn't a single issue where he didn't either meet or exceed on every front of the evaluation that we had professionally done. And you look at the previous year with the building consolidation, how much money that's saving the taxpayers, the jail moving forward. I don't understand why we wouldn't want to at least be fair, and I don't like the signal it sends to the rest of the employees or the community. I mean, if unless we're saying we don't think you're doing a good job, we should be fair.
I've got Commissioner Kavesi, and then I did see you, Commissioner Olson. So Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this isn't necessarily a reflection on the performance review or the performance issues. I don't have any problems with that. I certainly support Mr. Fritz and appreciate all that he does for us. I just wanted to raise the issue going forward with our budget uncertainties and discuss the possibilities of making some changes. I appreciate that the commissioners may have this discussion later, and I understand that you know, it's not really fair to Mr. Fritz, but I just wanted to discuss the option. So I could approve the 2.5% raise currently and retroactive. I'm just not in favor of increasing the vacation days.
Commissioner Olson.
Yeah, Ken, and I'm sorry if I didn't mean any disrespect in any means. The vacation's my hang up. You know, let's say next year you want to be brought to average. Now you've got the vacation on the books. So, you know, it's one of those things that once granted doesn't go away. And that is not how we would, you know, be equitable to every other employee, you know, especially ones that have been there 30 plus years.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I think that my position was that I put together a package, and it was only had, you know, a couple components, and that was in lieu of extra money, I would take some vacation time. I felt that was a better thing for the county. If the county board decides that you know, more money is appropriate, then that's fine. That's fine too. I'm not hung up on the vacation. It's the fact that when you start with the average, which is, you know, fairly substantial, you know, that if I looked at that, I said, well, that's what we're doing for everybody else. That's what's fair. That's what we've decided for everybody's fair. And so you have to look at that as, at least from my perspective, that's the benchmark I'm using. If anything less than that, you know, it needs to represent some appreciation of the fact that that's what we use for all employees.
Commissioner Jacob.
Well, yeah, so with Commissioner Olson's concerns, that was exactly what I had proposed, was average without vacation. And upon discussion, do you think you could support that now, Commissioner Olson?
I guess I would want to hear couple of questions with that. Before we've brought people up to the average over a series of, you know, a time, and are we at that, as far as that time frame, would that be now? And if so, because that is what we've done, I can support that, but I just want to know if that's within the time frame that we did, and if is that what you want, Ken? I understand you want the vacation, but next year you might want to be brought to average, and then we already got vacation on the books. So kind of double.
Question, Ken, before you answer that, a question. Vacation is, you know, is pay, as paid time off. How does that impact the other things that go along with a salary? The unemployment, the workman's comp, all that stuff. Is that treated the same?
Well, it doesn't change that. You're still paying all those things based on each formula. Each one's different. Workers' comp's different than unemployment. That's different than FICA.
Right. Right.
So
but wages,
really doesn't change
when you give you $1 of pay, there's a lot of 50, 75 cents that goes expenses that go along with it. But the vacation wouldn't necessarily be as impactful.
Right.
And then if we stop and think, if we give him vacation, he's out there in the local or whatever, and he's spending money, and then we're going to make him spend money, so we collect that half-cent sales tax off of everything that he buys, and he's an economic engine. So I guess, and seriously, we talked about mental health and everything. The guy needs vacation to come back rejuvenated to work with the 5 of us. That's a monumental task.
Yeah, let me answer Greg's questions. I'm not hung up on the vacation at all. Okay, but I do think that it's a package. And as far as the money goes, one of the reasons that there's such a disparity between where I'm at and the average is because the last year, and I believe the year before that, I've only taken the amount of money that the contracts have offered. So in other words, I did the same thing last year, and what it's done, unfortunately, is put me in kind of a hole. And so that's why when I came forward and said, well, I'll just go do the same thing I've been doing, but I would like a little more in by the way of vacation, in acknowledging the fact that I'm far away from that average. If I had used the average, like the progression that you're talking about, Greg, I would have done some last year. So I would have had a higher salary last year. I would have done some this year, on my way to that average. If you want to lay out a plan where you say, okay, we agree that the average is fine, but we don't want to do it today. We want to put you on a path there and increase it, somewhere in between. I could live with that. It's kind of weird having this kind of a negotiation in public, but I feel it's important. I mean, if we're, I want to work for the county. I want to continue to serve the public. I don't want to be, greedy or ask for additional compensation unless I believe that it's important. But I do believe that there's a fairness aspect. And if we continue to go down the path we're going, I'll just keep losing ground in relation to the other employees. And I don't think that's appropriate.
Commissioner Jacob.
So I think it goes against protocol for me to make the same motion twice.
I don't think you can.
Well,
I think there's a motion on the table already, isn't there?
Right, to accept the package as presented with the pay raise, a 2.5%, and the 5 days vacation. So we probably need go ahead, discussion?
Yeah, so my discussion is, I think we should be coming up with a plan to move the administrator to average, just like we're doing with everybody else. I wonder if either moving him to average now or going half the distance from 144 to 149 and eliminating the vacation and then try to get to average next year would be a better solution. I do feel like the vacation does add some odd dynamics that other people are maybe the unions are gonna say, hey, this guy is getting vacation, we should all get it too. So I do feel like that's a little cumbersome. I'd prefer to deal with it just from a straight salary standpoint. So I guess there's a motion on the floor and I know how to deal with it.
We'll vote on the motion, but a comment on that vacation. We're talking unions, we're talking other, we didn't really talk too much of electeds, although we use that average thing, and you all know I despise that average thing because actually by the average, again, if you look at the budgets, we're amongst the lowest, but we asked Ken to do probably the most with less money than all the other ones we're comparing him to, so I can justify the thing. How many we don't even know, how many days did Ron Ganrud take? How many days did Karn Sonneman? How many days did Bob Bamnick? How many days did Sandra Sukla take? They're not held accountable for vacation because they're an elected. They come and go as, and I know they're very dedicated. They probably didn't take anywhere near, that, but that's at their discretion. And here we have an administrator that coordinates everything, and we're trying to limit his flexibility. So with that said, I guess we do have a motion. Chris.
Yeah,
Commissioner Meyer.
No, you can go. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so the increase, I think, is about a third of what it would be to get to average. I think maybe my math is bad. So I am wondering if you guys would be willing to accept an amendment. And so the amendment would drop the vacation days and add that with this year and 2 more years that we move to average. If that would be acceptable to the administrator.
Let me see.
So what would that salary be, Ken?
Hang on. I'll have to figure it out.
And I'm doing that based on my memory was that it was 3 years.
Well, my quick math would put that at 145,465.
That would
if you did a third.
If it puts you a third of the way, and then we would also add to this motion that we're agreeing that over the next 2 years we'll bring you up to the average, and then we'd be removing the vacation days.
Yeah, and I can live with that. There's one caveat.
Yeah.
You can't tie future boards.
Right. We have an election. Yes.
But
course, yeah.
I can understand and live with that. So
sure.
As long as the board members that are here recognize that in the future.
And I mean, exactly. And of course we did use language like that with the sheriff and some of the other positions. So.
Yeah. So I think that's a good solution because it I think it if it's approved, I think it creates a path. Everybody kind of knows the game plan. I think it's fair, and I'm glad that or at least I feel that it would acknowledge then my service, and I appreciate that.
I would second the amendment then.
Could you rephrase the?
Well, that's a whole different. I
don't know.
I personally think we should vote on the first motion, and then if it fails, it fails, and redo it, because that's quite a change to me.
Okay.
So
do you want me to withdraw it?
Marcia made the motion. Marcia made the. I'm sorry. The commissioner made the chair made the first motion, so you can just withdraw the motion.
Okay. Well, I'm reluctant to withdraw it with Commissioner Kavesi's thought train of cutting people's salaries going forward. So here, you just talk about tying a board. So this change that Commissioner Meyer is proposing, or Commissioner Jacob, I'm not sure who at this point. We're saying right now we're going to give you more money, but then it was laid on the table when we do budgets for 2021, we may look at cutting, wages.
I get it. I think I don't know. You can't really set a salary for next year.
No.
So whatever that is, I understand. But I think that an approval of the motion, if you amended motion, because the other motion includes the vacation. So,
Yeah. So I will reluctantly withdraw my motion. Does the seconder agree? I think that was Commissioner Jacob.
Okay. I will withdraw the second to that, but not the second to.
Okay. Now I would entertain for a new motion, please.
Okay, so
Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer is recommending that instead of what was offered, we are going to give a third of the salary that would take our administrator to the average, with the idea that in 2 more years, we will continue those increases to bring it to whatever the average is at that time. And we will exclude the additional part of the package that included the additional vacation days. And I am,
I'll second that as stated.
yeah, and I am not addressing anything about future pay cuts. That's not part of the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to offer a third of the increase over the average of our comparable counties and no vacation.
Yeah.
Is everybody clear?
Could you state in the motion that it's 145, 464?
Yes, please.
It just makes it cleaner.
145, 464. And a point of clarification then, is that to start retroactive to January 1?
Yes.
Okay. And okay, if the math is right, if that changes,
Surely the average will change.
That's the dollar amount.
Yeah, it's
okay. Roll call vote then. Commissioner Kavesi.
Is raising her hand.
Pardon me? I'm sorry. Commissioner Kavesi? Are you ready to vote,
Yeah,
or you
hand
got a question?
raised. I don't
Discussion?
appreciate the characterization that I'm requesting lower salaries. I was just offering that as an option and bringing it into the discussion, recognizing that our budget is uncertain and that we're in difficult, uncertain times. So no reflection on anybody's performance, which I've stated several times. I could support the motion because it now gives us a pathway forward. So thank you very much for all of your discussion and consideration.
Okay, so that is vote on the motion, please. Commissioner Kavesi.
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Meyer.
Commissioner Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Commissioner Olson votes aye.
Commissioner Jacob.
Jacob, I approve.
Commissioner Ward, I don't deny, my reasoning is I don't deny Ken the raise and everything. I just don't, I've never approved of that averaging thing, and I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to be consistent. I don't approve that. And I think the proposal he put out would have been a better path forward. So I vote no. So the motion passes 4-1. Moving on, 6.7. Discuss and provide direction for future agenda items. And I have a feeling maybe we should table this. It's been a long meeting.
I would be willing.
I'm getting a thumbs up from Commissioner Meyer. Anybody else?
I'll move to table this until the next meeting.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, I feel like we kind of already understand what we intend to do. It feels like it just takes a quick discussion and vote. We've kind of discussed it in the past. I don't think it needs much discussion. I kind of feel like all 5 commissioners are on the same page.
I thought that the goal was to talk about every single item on the list.
No. Maybe I'm wrong. I know those items are on there, but I felt like the agenda item was just how do we handle future agenda items?
Originally, it started out that way, but at the last board meeting, there was discussion about bringing the list of what's pending out there forward as well. So it's kind of both now.
So we do have a suggestion at table, just because of the length we've been on the, and I see my battery's giving me a signal too. And I didn't bring the charger upstairs.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so can we
second, I think.
Consensus to table? Hearing no objections to tabling, we'll put that on a future agenda item. All right. Let's see, we had the finance, 6.8, receive monthly finance and budget. Pat, are you with us? Is Pat with us?
Yep, here he comes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Pat, thank you.
Okay. I'll quickly go over the February update. For February, the actual revenues were 11.8 in the revenue fund. Excuse me, that was beginning cash. Our actual revenues were 684,000. Actual expenses were 1.7. Ending cash was 10.8. For the year, beginning balance started at 13.4. Actual revenues were 1 million. Actual expenses were 3.6, and ending cash is 10.8. The variance in the general fund is a negative 2.6 compared to last year's negative 2.4. If you look at the grand total of everything, it's a negative 3.5 compared to a negative 2.7. I wanted to point out that the Human Services Fund is actually running a negative at this point of 1.4. Some of the things that are actually causing the variances in several of the funds is, one, there's an extra payroll that actually occurred in January. We've actually had some time-even expenses that have occurred. We had 26,000 of MFIP expenses that occurred in between January and February that didn't occur last year. We had an additional 170,000 that occurred in the mental health. A timing that was basically the state didn't get us the bills until, I think they actually didn't come until April or May. So that 150,000, and then there's adult guardianships that are kind of up also about $20,000. Any questions on this document?
No, I'm good.
Marie, I see Commissioner Kavesi.
Sorry, that's a mistake.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
No, yeah,
Okay, all right.
I'm good.
Okay, continue on, Pat,
Okay.
please.
Okay, then we'll go to the summary cash flow. Beginning cash started at 16.5. Actual revenues were 4 million. Actual expenses were 7.5. Ending cash is 13.1. Again, you'll see the variances of the negative 3.4 compared to the negative 2.7. Any questions on the summary document? If not, we can go to the summary budget. Budget at this point through February is 17%. We have general fund that's running higher than the 17%, and so is highway and human services, and it's kind of the reasons I stated in the previous document. And one of the biggest ones is that we had that extra payroll, and that should kind of level off as time goes on. Again, hopefully we don't have a lot of expenses that are unforeseen expenses related to the COVID-19. Any questions on that document? If not, thank you.
All right, thank you, Pat.
Yep.
All right, committee reports and communications. I had Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, I have 2 board actions that I wanted to request.
Okay, board action.
And I am looking at trying to do these as soon as possible because they are COVID related. The first of these is we have about $650,000 in our revolving loan fund, and we have not made any new loans in about the last year. I would like us to have a conversation about a way that we might repurpose this fund to help with the economic recovery of businesses and agriculture. And probably, so at any rate, so that's the conversation I'd like for us to have at our next meeting, if possible.
Okay, do we have a second for that one?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, so move that one forward, Ken.
Terrific.
All right.
I had one more, and again, this is something that I'd like to do more quickly, if possible. I have been getting a lot of emails, people concerned about public health issues. I know that in the past, prior to my election, that this board has talked about not doing any activity that was not mandated by the state. I think especially with respect to health and human services during the pandemic, that perhaps we need to empower our staff to, especially when there's state funding, to move beyond this in order to keep the public safe. And so I'd like to have a conversation about that. And I'm really talking about during the time of the pandemic. After it's over, we can have a different conversation about what that looks like afterwards.
I guess I'm unclear what, I don't know what kind of activity would fall in that.
I would see only maybe a resolution, say, asking our staff that regardless of whether the state mandated an action, if they feel that it's necessary for the safety and public health, that they either take the action needed if it's reimbursed or bring it to us if not.
Okay, all right.
I would second.
Jacob? Or Commissioner Jacob?
So without having had our discussion that we tabled, now, I'm very unclear whether you're bringing this forward with what you want to accomplish or whether you're bringing it forward for us to discuss about where we're going to go with it.
I want to have a discussion about it at the potentially at the next board meeting.
And I'm guessing it's the same thing with the last issue?
Yes, exactly. Simply because, yes.
So to me, the discussion should be whether the board collectively wants to do this. Whether we, I mean, that was the idea of tabling, or what the issue we had tabled was 2 commissioners can't just put something on the agenda. It requires a full board, and now we're having a meeting outside of a scheduled meeting if more than you and I have this discussion.
No,
So-
and I'm just asking to have the conversation about it at the next meeting. I'm not asking for us to take any resolution at this meeting.
Okay, and I assume that's retroactive to the last item 2 that you brought up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not asking us to do those things. I'm asking us to talk about doing those things.
Right, and it has a time sensitivity issue.
Yes, that's how I feel about it, yeah.
All right, so did we have a second on the public health one? Commissioner Kavesi?
I would second that.
Okay, all right, so Ken has those. Commissioner Jacob, you still have your hand up?
Well, just when we get to, I guess you got to go through Commissioner Olson before you get to me.
Yeah, he didn't have anything. Do you have something, Commissioner Jacob? Or does that, I'm sorry, Commissioner Meyer, does that take care of it?
Yes, thank you, yes.
Okay, Commissioner Olson had nothing. Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah, as another concern for a future agenda item, I think it's also time sensitive in light of what the COVID pandemic is doing to our jail population, whether the amount of money that we're putting forward in planning, whether we should be reviewing that sooner rather than later, whether it makes sense to figure out something other than putting as many people as close together as we can and spending 20-some million dollars on something that might not be what we want in the future. I think that warrants a board discussion in a timely fashion.
Okay, I guess I'm a little unclear. What you're saying we need to plan something different, or I'm unclear?
I think it's potential that maybe what we're doing is not the right thing going into the future with building that many jail cells that close together. And
by the design. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I would second that. I think we need, and maybe it's too early to get the Department of Corrections in to weigh in on what they're recommending, but I think there could be some good discussion. Yes. Okay. So anything else, Commissioner Jacob?
That's all I need.
Okay. I had one thing, being that we are the Winona County Health Board, I would like to send a thank you, just a short thank you card to Commissioner Jan Malcolm. I've had the opportunity to work with her in the past through the SHAC committee and everything. And she just really, when I see these press conferences and such, she really gives a calming effect and seems to have Minnesotans we're in good hands with her at our leadership. So just a thank you. I'll sign it, Winona County Health Board. Thank you for the good work and keep it up, and we appreciate it. So do I have a thumbs up? I saw Commissioner Meyer give me a thumbs up. Commissioner Kavesi, Commissioner Jacob, Commissioner Olson. Okay, all right. I will just send her a quick note because I think she is an outstanding leader in our public health committee. Thank you. Anything else to come before the board at this time?
I would just congratulate all of you on using the technology because I think despite any of the foibles, it's gone really well.
It
So,
has. Yes, I was quite nervous about doing this, but it did work quite well. I
Yeah,
don't.
I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment that I appreciate our honest discussion of all of the issues on today's agenda. We had some difficult items and we're paid to have difficult discussions. So I appreciate that we handled everything that we needed to handle today and going forward.
Yes. All right. Well, I entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to adjourn. Just a point of discussion. Next time, I need a more comfortable chair.
I think you are responsible for taking care of that, Commissioner.
I don't know if you saw, I almost fell off the chair reaching for a pillow. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We won't do roll call there. All right. Thank you very much.
Please stay safe.